Chapter 1468. Divine Mentor Blackfeather's tone was very certain and unquestionable. Ji Tianqing shook his head and rejected the offer. Divine Mentor, I will not take over the position of Prefecture Master. You can discuss it again. Why? Divine Mentor Blackfeather frowned and asked, in terms of strength, you are now the undisputed #1 powerhouse in the continent, and you are not any weaker than the Prefecture Master. In terms of prestige, you are the great hero who killed the Demon King and heavily injured the ancestral demon god. You are the savior who saved the world. Furthermore, the Prefecture Master and the 3 seniors have passed on their skills and techniques to you. You should inherit the Prefecture Master's legacy and take over the position. Tianqing, can you bear to see the imperial residence decline? Ji Tianqing shook his head again and explained, Divine Mentor, although what you said makes sense, I cannot take over the position of Prefecture Master. In 10 days, I will leave the Tianxian continent and head to Xinwu continent to find my wife, deal with the ancestral demon god, and fulfill some of my wishes. I have more important things to do, and I cannot stay in the Tianxian continent and waste my time. Hearing that, God Sage Heyu fell silent. He had guessed that Ji Tianqing would head to another continent sooner or later. However, he had not expected this day to come so quickly. Ji Tianqing continued, furthermore, the imperial residence will not decline. This is the holy land of martial arts that nurtures the geniuses of the 3 races. There will always be new blood joining, and more powerhouses will be born. The imperial residence is the gathering place of geniuses and the cradle of powerhouses. It is not the imperial court that rules the 3 races, nor is it the overlord of the Tianxian continent. Once the demons are eliminated, the world will be at peace. The humans, demons, and water races will not threaten the imperial residence, and they will even support it. Even if the Prefecture Master is still alive and is the #1 powerhouse in the continent, he has never bullied or ruled the imperial court of the 3 races, right? Therefore, you do not need to worry. Divine Mentor Blackfeather frowned and pondered for a while. He was somewhat troubled. No buts. Ji Tianqing quickly waved his hand and said solemnly, I will make the decision on behalf of my senior. You will inherit the position of Prefecture Master. In 10 days, I will leave the Central Plains and head to the Xinwu continent. God Teacher Blackfeather still wanted to persuade Ji Tianqing, but he was interrupted by Ji Tianqing. Great Divine Master, I have already made up my mind. You don't have to say anything more. Summon a few God-tier masters to the Imperial Palace later. I want to announce this in person. Also, before I leave, I will treat your injuries. I'll impart to you my experience and insights on breaking through to the Essence Soul Realm. I hope it can help you break through to the Essence Soul Realm as soon as possible. Divine Master He, you could no longer persuade him, so he could only acquiesce to his decision. Tianqing, since you've decided to go to the Divine Item Continent, I have to remind you of something. I don't know if the Mansion Master has told you. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked in confusion, What's the matter? Divine Master Blackfeather hesitated for a moment before saying in a low voice, Ever since the Palace Master took over the Monarch Mansion, he rarely stayed in the Monarch Mansion for the past 800 years. Most of the time, the Mansion Master was nowhere to be seen. In the past, I didn't know where he went, but I later found out that he spent most of his time on the Xinwu continent. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and revealed an interested expression. I also feel that this matter is a little strange. What is senior brother looking forward to going to the Xinwu continent? Divine Master Blackfeather explained, I don't know the exact reason either. I've only learned a few things from the Mansion Master and some scattered information. On the Xinwu continent, the Mansion Master seems to be working for an absolute powerhouse, and he seems to be carrying out some sort of plan. Furthermore, in the past 800 years, the Monarch Mansion has produced 2 genius powerhouses who have reached the primordial soul realm, and they were both sent to the Xinwu continent by the Mansion Master. Upon hearing this, Ji Tianqing furrowed his brows and pondered silently for a moment. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. Great Divine Master, are you saying that the Mansion Master is working for that absolute powerhouse and is helping that powerhouse gather martial geniuses? If not, how can the Mansion Master travel between the 2 continents freely? This is completely illogical. Divine Master Blackfeather nodded. Yes, that's what I think as well. I feel that there are many suspicious points in this matter. The Mansion Master is too mysterious, and I don't know much about him, much less his secrets. However, I can vaguely sense that the mansion master does not care much about the situation on the Tianqian continent. His goal and attention are all on the Xinwu continent. Ji Tianqing frowned and asked, Great Divine Master, have you ever heard the mansion master mention which powerhouse he is working for? Or is he working for some power? Divine Master Blackfeather shook his head and replied with a blank expression. The mansion master is very secretive about this matter and has never mentioned it. I have some doubts, which is why I'm discussing this matter with you. Furthermore, I have another question to consider. After you leave the Tianqian continent and I take over as the mansion master, what should I do? Do I have to work for that powerhouse? How do I contact that powerhouse? Furthermore, what is the purpose of the monarch mansion's existence? Why was it created? Upon hearing these words, Ji Tianqing's body trembled violently. Many thoughts flashed through his mind, and the more he thought about it, the more terrified he became. He could vaguely sense that the monarch mansion's origins were very problematic. The mansion master and that powerhouse were probably playing a very big game of chess. He even began to worry about Yun Yao. Back then, the mansion master had personally promised him that Yun Yao would not be in any danger when she arrived on the Xinwu continent, and she would even be treated extremely well. He was willing to believe the mansion master's words, and he did not want to maliciously guess the mansion master's motives and goals. After all, the mansion master had been willing to sacrifice his own life to help Lu Yin increase his strength, and he had even imparted his lifetime's worth of cultivation to Lu Yin. Such a selfless sacrifice was something that Lu Yin would remember for the rest of his life, and he would be extremely grateful for it. Lu Yin did not believe that the mansion master had any malicious intentions. However, all of this was very strange and very mysterious. Lu Yin's fear and worry stemmed from his ignorance of the mansion master's plans, and he also did not know who the mansion master was working for. He did not know where Yun Yao was, and he did not know whether Yun Yao was safe, which was why he was so worried and anxious. After a long time, Lu Yin finally calmed down. He reminded Divine Master Blackfeather, Great Divine Master, after I head to the Xinwu continent, I will definitely investigate this matter thoroughly. You do not need to worry about this matter, and just focus on managing the monarch mansion. If that mysterious powerhouse needs you to work for him or do something for him, he will naturally contact you. Divine Master Blackfeather thought for a moment and nodded. It seems that we can only let nature take its course for now. Ji Tianqing gave him a few more instructions before he got up and left Blackfeather Palace, rushing towards the Imperial Palace in the depths of the monarch mansion. The Imperial Palace was the mansion master's residence, and it was also the most sacred and hidden place in the monarch mansion. If the mansion master had left behind any information or clues, it would most likely be hidden in the Imperial Palace. Chapter 1469. Although the prefecture master had already passed away, there were still a dozen or so guards standing guard outside the palace. When Ji Tianqing arrived at the palace, the guards at both sides of the entrance hurriedly saluted him and opened the doors. Currently, he was the most respected person in the Sovereign King Manor by all the guards, princes, and priests. He was also the person that everyone had tacitly agreed to be the next prefecture master. He stepped into the main hall of the palace and waved his hand, closing the doors behind him. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In the spacious and dim main hall, the walls on both sides immediately lit up with rows of bright lights. The bright golden light illuminated the entire hall, illuminating the ground and the vermilion and gold-painted pillars with golden light. Ji Tianqing circled the walls of the main hall and slowly walked around, carefully observing the diagrams and words on the walls. Although he had been to the palace a few times, he had never had the chance to carefully observe these things. After half an hour, he had finished observing the entire hall, but he did not find anything useful. The diagrams and words in the hall were the words of the humans, demons, water, and demons from thousands of years ago, and they had nothing to do with the Xinwu continent. He left the hall with some regret and walked deeper into the palace. Deep in the palace, there were dozens of empty rooms and secret rooms that were dimly lit and covered in dust. Ji Tianqing released his divine sense and carefully searched every room, looking for any useful clues or information. Unknowingly, an hour had passed. He had searched through more than 40 rooms, but he still did not find anything useful. He even searched the secret room where he had previously been in seclusion, but he still did not find anything. There was only one room left, and it was protected by a primordial spirit formation that he had not searched yet. He knew that this was the private room where the prefecture master lived and cultivated. Although the prefecture master did not spend much time in the Sovereign King Manor, every time he returned to the Sovereign King Manor, he would stay in that room. Thus, Ji Tianqing walked to the door of the room and used his arts to break through the formation. The defensive formation of this room had been personally set up by the prefecture master. He had inherited the prefecture master's absolute techniques and martial arts experience, so he naturally knew how to break through it. In less than an hour, he had broken through the formation and opened the stone door to the secret room. This secret chamber wasn't very big, only 100 feet in radius. The secret chamber was empty except for a futon made of top-grade spiritual jade in the middle of the empty space. In the corner of the secret room, there was a jade bed made of 10,000-year-old cold jade. In addition, there were many hidden compartments cut into the surrounding walls to store things. Ji Tianqing walked around the secret room and opened more than a dozen secret compartments to check the things inside. Most of the secret compartments stored some pills and array diagrams, as well as the fragments of bizarre magical equipment. Ji Tianqing picked out a few primordial soul-level divine pellets and stored them in his spatial ring for future use. In the last hidden compartment, he found an ancient gray book. This ancient book was very thick and heavy. The edges and pages were worn and curled. It was obvious that it had been flipped through often. His heart was filled with anticipation as he flipped through the ancient book. However, there were a few strange characters on the cover of the ancient book, which made him frown. He pondered for a while, but still couldn't recognize what those characters were. However, he was sure that those characters were not the characters of the human, demon, water, or demon races, nor were they the ancient seal characters. Could it be that these aren't the characters of the Tianqian continent? This thought flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind. His eyes suddenly focused, and his heart was filled with anticipation. He flipped open the ancient book and saw that the dark golden pages were filled with lines of small black characters. Those small characters were the same as the words on the cover. They were not the characters of the Tianqian continent. Ji Tianqing pondered for a long time, but still couldn't understand the meaning of these characters. Thus, he continued to flip through the pages. From the third page onwards, some scattered human characters appeared on the pages. Those lines of small characters were similar to annotations and instructions, distributed in the middle of the mysterious characters. Ji Tianqing immediately showed a hint of joy. He compared them with the human characters and learned to recognize the mysterious characters. Gradually, he was immersed in the ancient book and forgot about the passage of time. After an hour, he could already recognize more than 100 mysterious characters. At this point, he finally understood that the characters on this ancient book were not the characters of the Tianqian continent, but rather the common language of the Shenwu continent. It's actually the characters of the Shenwu continent. After the Battle of the Gods, the various continents were no longer connected to each other, so of course, the characters and languages would be different. The master hid this book in a secret room, added annotations and transliterations, and often flipped through it. It seems that he was also learning the characters of the Shenwu continent. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself as he seriously focused on flipping through the ancient book. He compared the master's annotations and continuously recognized the characters of the Shenwu continent. Unknowingly, 2 days passed. During these 2 days, he stayed in the secret room and read the ancient book from beginning to end twice. Relying on his highly retentive memory, he memorized the contents of more than 200 pages of paper without missing a single word. Furthermore, after repeatedly studying and studying, he could already recognize more than 1,000 of the Shenwu continent's characters. He could even imitate the sounds of the Shenwu continent's characters and say some simple and common phrases. This was not a small gain for him. At the very least, he now had a certain foundation. When he went to the Shenwu continent in the future, he would be able to quickly learn and grasp the Shenwu continent's language. Besides this, he had also discovered a mysterious clue. At the end of the ancient book, there was a mysterious imprint that was about the size of a fingernail. The imprint was oval-shaped, and there were more than 30 patterns on its edges. It looked like a garland of flowers or a coiling dragon. In the middle of the circle was a simple picture of a divine bird with a slender neck and soaring wings. This picture was somewhat abstract, and Ji Tianqing could not determine whether it was a picture of a divine bird or some strange symbol. In any case, this imprint was very special and mysterious, and it definitely contained some sort of meaning. Ji Tianqing pondered for a long time, but he still could not figure out the meaning of this imprint. He could only silently guess that this mysterious imprint was definitely related to the Xinwu continent. It could be a secret signal used by the master to communicate with the Xinwu continent, or it could be the symbol of that absolute powerhouse or some other power. Ji Tianqing memorized the appearance of this mysterious imprint without missing a single detail. He then placed the ancient book back into the secret compartment and turned to leave the secret room. Aside from the Xinwu continent's characters and the mysterious symbol, there were no other clues in the palace. Ji Tianqing memorized these things in his heart, and he would continue his investigation when he went to the Xinwu continent in the future. A moment later, he returned to the palace's main hall. Outside the sacred and dignified hall stood a few black-robed divine masters, who were silently waiting. These 6 divine masters were led by Divine Master Blackfeather, and they were the few remaining powerhouses of the imperial household. Ji Tianqing asked the guards to open the door and lead the few god-tier masters into the main hall. Chapter 1470. After Ji Tianqing announced the news, the matter of the Imperial Monarch Manor was resolved. After Divine Master He Yu became the Manor Lord, the situation of the Imperial Monarch Manor would be out of Lu Yin's control. He dismissed the 5 Divine Masters, leaving only Divine Master He Yu in the hall. Lu Yin then brought Divine Master He Yu to a secret room to heal his injuries and pass on his experience of breaking through to the primordial spirit realm. This matter delayed Ji Tianqing for a few more days. By the time he walked out of the secret room, 5 days had already passed. Divine Master He Yu remained in the secret room and continued to heal his injuries while comprehending Lu Yin's cultivation experience and insights. Ji Tianqing left the Imperial Monarch Manor and flew south at lightning speed, rushing towards the Tianjin region. He would be leaving in a few days, and he did not know when they would meet again after this parting. Before he left, he naturally had to visit his father, Master Chu Tiansheng, Old Man Xiang Wuji, and the people of the Sky Pillar sect. At the very least, he had to say goodbye to his father and elders. With his current strength, he was unparalleled in the Tianxian continent. From Zhongzhou City to the Tianjin region, he only needed 1 day to arrive. After reaching the Tianjin region, he first went to the domain chief's manor to visit his father and the Ji family. When Ji Chongkong learned that Lu Yin was leaving the Tianxian continent, he was naturally very reluctant and worried. However, he also knew that Ji Tianqing had a reason to go to the Xinwu continent. Thus, he could only express his support for Ji Tianqing's decision and carefully advise him. In any case, the imperial court would soon send someone to pick him up and let him settle down there. There was no need to worry about his safety in the future. After leaving the domain chief's manor, Ji Tianqing went to the Sky Pillar sect to bid farewell to Chu Tiansheng, Xiang Wuji, and the others. Everyone chatted for a long time. Chu Tiansheng, Xiang Wuji, and the others were filled with emotion and reluctance. However, no one tried to persuade him to stay, and they all sincerely wished him well. After this matter was over, Ji Tianqing no longer had any worries and returned to Zhongzhou with peace of mind. Very quickly, 10 days passed. Finally, the day Ji Tianqing had to leave arrived. Central Continent City was flooded with people, bustling with noise and excitement. As early as a few days ago, the news of Ji Tianqing leaving had already spread throughout Central Continent City. Early in the morning, there were hundreds of thousands of soldiers and civilians who spontaneously sent Ji Tianqing off. Everyone gathered outside the Forest of Divine Steels and lined up along the main road, all the way to the city square. Countless people looked in the direction of the imperial residence, waiting for Ji Tianqing to appear. They discussed with reluctance. At the exit of the monarch mansion, there were dozens of honorable experts who had specially come to see Ji Tianqing off. The Emperor, the Golden Dragon Emperor, and the Heavenly Net Demon Emperor were the leaders of the group. Behind the 3 supremes were Long Yunxiao, Kuan Wu, Ji Ku, and Tai Yi, as well as Xiao Han, Yun Zhongqi, Divine Dr. Bailey, Fox Princess, and Ling Yichen. Everyone's expressions and emotions were very complicated. Ji Ku, in particular, was the most upset. Today, she wore a fiery red dress that trailed on the ground and a luxurious jade crown with a Luan phoenix on her head. Her entire body exuded a noble aura. However, there were tears in her clear eyes, and her eyes were slightly red. She had not seen Ji Tianqing for more than a year since the outbreak of the demon race's chaos. She never would have thought that when she saw Ji Tianqing again, it would be the time to send him off. A moment later, when the exit of the monarch mansion opened and Ji Tianqing walked out first, everyone looked in his direction. He walked toward the crowd, followed by He Yu, a few divine sages, and many princes. The countless soldiers and civilians near the forest of divine steels immediately bowed to Ji Tianqing, saying words of farewell and well wishes. For a moment, the forest of divine steels was bustling with noise. Ji Tianqing walked in front of the emperor and the others and stood still. He raised his hand slightly, indicating for everyone to quiet down. Then he bowed to the emperor, Golden Dragon Emperor, and the others and said goodbye with a smile. Long Yunshao, Kuan-Wu, Tai Yi Ji-Ke, and the others all went up to him and chatted with him. The three princes could still maintain their smiles and spoke with confidence. The three of them sincerely wished Ji Tianqing a safe journey and that he would be able to reach the pinnacle of the other continent and achieve glory again. Ji Tianqing returned their greetings one by one to express his gratitude. Then he walked in front of Ji-Ke. He and Ji-Ke stood face to face. Their eyes met, and they both fell silent. Ji-Ke looked at him affectionately. Her thin lips were slightly pursed, and tears welled up in her eyes. Ji Tianqing revealed a smile and reached out to wipe away the tears at the corner of her eyes. He said gently, "So many people are watching. Don't cry. It will damage the dignity of the demon race's princess." Ji-Ke pouted and muttered softly, "I don't care. I haven't seen you for more than a year, and you're leaving as soon as we meet. I just want to look at you a few more times and remember your face forever, so that I won't forget you in the future." Ji Tianqing revealed an apologetic smile and explained, "Ke, there's bound to be a time of meeting and parting. I can't stay in the profound sky continent. I will have to leave eventually." Ji-Ke pursed her lips and asked softly, "Big brother Tianqing, can you take me with you?" "I'm afraid not." Ji Tianqing shook his head and explained through voice transmission that space-time tunnel can only be entered by those at the primordial soul realm. The anticipation in Ji-Ke's eyes instantly disappeared and was replaced by disappointment. She nodded silently and looked at Ji Tianqing with a determined gaze. She said firmly and persistently, "Big brother Tianqing, when you go there, you must take care of yourself and be careful. Primordial soul realm. I will work hard to cultivate. Big brother Tianqing, I will come to find you very soon." Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. "All right. If you reach the primordial soul realm in the future and don't want to be the empress of the demonkin, then come to the Shenwu continent to find me." Ji-Ke thought for a moment and then added, "Big brother Tianqing, you must keep your word and remember our agreement. You must wait for me. If it takes too long and you're already gone by the time I reach the Shenwu continent, I will hate you for the rest of my life." Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. He bid farewell to her and continued walking forward. As he walked out of the forest of divine steels, everyone bowed to him and sent him off with their best wishes. He nodded to the crowd and only stopped when he reached a wide road. "Everyone, thank you for sending me off, and thank you for your well wishes. Ji Tianqing, farewell. If there is a chance in this life, let us meet again." Ji Tianqing calmly looked at the crowd and bowed. He then turned around and stepped into the sky, his clothes fluttering as he flew east. Everyone near the forest of divine steels looked up at the sky and watched his figure disappear over the horizon. It was a long time before they looked away. Ji-Ke was also stunned for a long time, and 2 sparkling tears silently fell from her eyes. "Big brother Tianqing, I will definitely come to find you. Wait for me." Chapter 1471. His long sleeves fluttered the wind and clouds as he strode through the meteors. Ji Tianqing's robes fluttered as he left the central continent and flew towards the eastern sea like a streak of light. He was traveling alone, and the only people who accompanied him to Shenwu continent were the Black Dragon, Qianyu, Ancestor Triune, and the Jinshan King. Everyone was in the world within the burial of Heaven's sword, quietly recovering from their injuries and recovering their strength. After a short 3 days, Ji Tianqing returned to the Nine Heavens platform in the Eastern Sea's sinkhole. He crossed the majestic Black Mountain and flew over the pitch-black abyss, heading straight for the Nine Heavens platform. Black clouds surged in the sky as thunder rumbled and lightning flashed. Kaboom! Following an earth-shattering explosion, a 1,000-meter-tall pillar of lightning smashed down, ruthlessly striking him. However, he was not injured at all, and he continued to fly towards the Nine Heavens platform after absorbing the power of the Nine Heavens thunder. After a few breaths of time, a second pillar of lightning struck him and engulfed him. He was still uninjured, and after absorbing the power of the thunder, he smoothly ascended the nine heavens platform. The platform was like a perfect piece of unpolished jade that flickered with a bright white light and emitted a divine aura. Ji Tianqing stood at the center of the platform with a solemn expression as he waved his palms and used the lightning attraction technique to draw in the divine power of thunder from the heavens and earth. When he formed a seal with both hands and successfully released the lightning attraction technique, the heavens and earth within a few hundred kilometers of him immediately changed. Strong winds blew around the nine heavens platform, and the black clouds in the sky churned violently. Within the pitch-black clouds, purple arcs of lightning flickered and quickly gathered to form a giant pillar of lightning. Kaboom! A 1,000-meter-tall pillar of lightning struck down from the sky and struck towards Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing formed a seal with both hands and guided the pillar of lightning to strike the nine heavens platform with a loud rumble. At that moment, the berserk power of thunder surged into the nine heavens platform like a tidal wave. The lightning split into tens of thousands of purple arcs that quickly spread out on the ground, forming dense patterns and lines. In just a few breaths of time, the jade ground within a 5-kilometer radius was covered in purple lightning patterns. The divine formation hidden in the nine heavens platform was activated. Shwa! A large gate formed from purple lightning appeared in the middle of the nine heavens platform. This divine lightning gate was 30 meters tall and 30 meters wide. Its entire body was dazzling purple. Purple lightning coiled around the gate frame and lintel, like dragons and snakes swimming around. Inside the door was a mysterious purple vortex. Ji Tianqing knew that the divine gate of thunder could only last for 2 breaths of time. Once he passed through the vortex, he would be able to enter the sky fissure. He took one last look at the surrounding sea before turning around and stepping into the divine thunderbolt gate. Shwa! In the next moment, he saw a flash of light in front of his eyes, and then he entered a pitch-black space. This pitch-black and icy void was the crack in the sky, which was also known as the Xianpin Gate. Ji Tianqing skimmed through the void with ease and flew into the darkness ahead. Not long after, he flew to the vicinity of the huge ball of light that was as bright as the moon. The gigantic ball of light, which was 1,000 kilometers wide, slowly rotated as usual and emitted a dazzling brilliance. Ji Tianqing did not stop. After passing through the ball of light, he continued to fly into the depths of the void. At that moment, the edges of the sky fissure suddenly lit up with a dazzling silver light. The silver light was 1,000 kilometers tall, and it was like a huge screen of light that clearly displayed various scenes. The images were clear and lifelike, and the silver light flowed like water, causing the images to constantly change. Ji Tianqing stared at the images and observed them for a while. He could tell that they were images of an ordinary continent, and the martial arts civilization was even more backward than the Tianshan continent. He continued to fly through the void, and after flying for half a day, he finally saw the image of the Shenwu continent appear on the screen. In the huge and clear image, there were ancient and majestic cities that towered atop mountains. They had a dignified aura and seemed to have experienced the vicissitudes of life. There were indomitable ancient beasts that stepped on mountains and rivers, and they fought against the wind and thunder, releasing destructive power. There were also martial arts powerhouses that stood above all living beings. They could summon clouds and rain with a flip of their hands, and they could use great divine abilities to summon the wind and rain, move mountains, and fill seas. Ji Tianqing stared at the slowly moving images on the screen and frowned as he fell into deep thought. When I first met Jojo here, she told me that the Shenwu continent has 3 divine kingdoms, and each of them is ruled by a martial god. He wondered where Yao Yao had been sent to by the prefecture lord. Which divine kingdom is she in? If I pass through the images on the screen, will I arrive at the corresponding region? He was very unfamiliar with Xianpin Gate and the Shenwu continent, and he did not know Yun Yao's location or any information about her. Many questions surfaced in his mind. After silently observing for a long time, he saw a huge and majestic city appear on the screen. He then leaped into the image. Whoosh! There was a flash of brilliance, and his figure passed through the image and disappeared. The image also spread out like a ripple and quickly dissipated. Ji Tianqing only saw a flash of brilliance in front of his eyes before he left the pitch-black and icy void and entered a warm world. Whoosh! He appeared out of thin air on a large road made of black stone. His eyes blinked a few times before they gradually adjusted to the bright light and allowed him to clearly see his surroundings. 3,000 meters behind him was the end of the road, where there was a towering city gate that was 60 meters tall. Below the city gate, there were over 100 black-armored city guards standing guard. They had a dignified lineup, and their bodies emitted a cold and austere aura. The commoners who entered and exited the city were lined up in order to be inspected by the city guards. On both sides of the city gate were tall and majestic dark brown walls that extended to the east and west. They were at least 50 kilometers long. There was no doubt that this was the majestic city that he had seen on the screen. It was built on the peak of a towering mountain, and it was both ancient and mysterious. It seems that I didn't guess wrong. I'll arrive at the corresponding region by passing through the image on the screen, Ji Tianqing muttered to himself as he continued to observe his surroundings. On the black stone road, there were many strangely dressed martial artists and commoners. They walked in groups of 3 to 5 as they conversed in a special language. These people's physiques and facial features were very similar to the humans of the Tianxian continent. However, upon closer inspection, one could still see the differences. On the other hand, Ji Tianqing's attire seemed out of place when compared to the commoners. It was rather strange. Many people who passed by him would give him a few more glances, casting curious and doubtful gazes at him. Ji Tianqing silently listened to the conversations of these people, and he quickly realized that they were speaking the language of the Shenwu continent. Furthermore, he could occasionally understand some words and roughly understand the meaning of certain words. He walked along the black stone road and walked towards the center of the city at a leisurely pace. He calmly observed his surroundings as he gradually gained a better understanding of this ancient city. He wanted to find Yun Yao as soon as possible. Chapter 1472. Ji Tianqing spent an entire day walking around the ancient city. In the process, he not only observed the layout of the city and its customs, but also learned a lot of information. Before coming to Shenwu continent, he had learned thousands of Shenwu continent's languages from the master's ancient book, which allowed him to speak a few simple and common languages. Now that he was in this city, he could see the words written all over the city and listen to the conversations of the commoners. Comparing the two, he was able to learn and improve even faster. According to his understanding, this ancient city was called Heavenly Cloud City. Heavenly Cloud City had a history of more than 1,000 years and covered an area of more than 200 kilometers. It was home to more than 3 million people. This was the imperial city of the Outcloud Empire, which was also the territory ruled by martial god Taihao. When he learned this, Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment, and a playful look flashed through his eyes. Jiuzhou seems to be from the divine kingdom of Taihao, and she worships and respects martial god Taihao greatly. I never thought that I would accidentally land in the divine kingdom of Taihao's territory. As this thought flashed through his mind, he thought of another question. I originally thought that the divine kingdom of Taihao was just a single nation, but I didn't expect that to be the case. There are actually 6 empires under the divine kingdom of Taihao, and the Outcloud Empire is one of them. After some investigation, he found out that the empires under the divine kingdom of Taihao were different from the kingdoms on the Tianxian continent. Every empire had a vast and boundless territory, as well as an endless number of civilians and subjects. On this continent that was enveloped by divine light, the world's spiritual energy was incomparably dense, and the martial arts culture was very prosperous. Just like Heavenly Cloud City, the commoners who grew up here were all martial artists who had started cultivating from a young age. The commoners who walked the streets and alleys, as well as the hawking peddlers, were all martial artists with decent strength. Ji Tianqing walked around the city and found that most of the people here were at least at the Tongxian realm or the Primal Core realm. Sky Origin Stage cultivators could only be considered as good cultivators in this place. They could be the city guards or the guards of the rich and powerful clans. Spirit Refinement realm martial artists were not rare either, and only primordial spirits could be considered powerhouses. Ji Tianqing even sensed that there were dozens of hidden but powerful auras in the city that far surpassed the primordial spirit realm. In addition to this information, he also noticed something else. In the city square, as well as on the archways of several streets, there were dark golden imperial notices posted on them. The imperial notice was filled with words written in the Shenwu continent's language. It was an order personally written by Emperor Chu Yun, and it seemed to be an extremely solemn announcement. Many people gathered around the imperial board to watch. They gathered in groups of 3 to 5 and discussed. Ji Tianqing passed by a large street and walked past a tall stone tablet. He saw countless people surrounding the stone tablet so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. He could not help but take a few more glances. From the discussions of the people, he heard the words disciple of God, grand competition, genius, and selection. These words immediately piqued his interest. He stopped in his tracks, passed through the crowd, and walked down the stone tablet. When he arrived at the stone stele, he raised his head to look at the dark gold imperial ranking list and read the words on it carefully. It took him 100 breaths of time to decipher the 200 characters and understand their meaning. It turned out that the Chuyan Empire was holding a disciple of God selection for the great martial god Taihao to select the most outstanding disciple. The disciple of God selection was held once every 20 years, and it was one of the most solemn ceremonies in the Taihao kingdom. Any martial artist between the ages of 20 and 80 who had reached the 6th level of the spirit-refining realm or above had the qualifications to participate. At the very beginning, more than 200 cities under the Chuyan Empire's jurisdiction would hold the first round of selections. The thousands of young martial artists who had won would come to the Imperial City, Heavenly Cloud City, to participate in the second round of selections and competitions. After a few days of competition, thousands of martial artists had been eliminated, and only 15 young geniuses had stood out and won. These 15 geniuses' names were written on the imperial board, and they were admired and praised by the entire city. They would represent the Chuyan Empire and head to the sacred Clear Sky Pagoda to participate in the final selection. Anyone who could become a disciple of God would receive unparalleled glory. They would be bathed in the divine light of martial god Taihao, and they would have a meteoric rise. Their future on the martial path would be limitless. Even if they couldn't become a disciple of God, they could still become a divine servant of the divine kingdom. Their status would far surpass that of ordinary nobles, and they would be very famous. All in all, the 15 geniuses on the imperial ranking list were going to become famous figures in the world. However, in 3 days, the 15 geniuses on the imperial board would have a final competition. They were going to hold a ranking battle in the plaza in the city to determine their respective rankings. Obviously, whoever was stronger would be able to obtain a higher ranking, receive better treatment, and have a more resounding reputation. After reading the news on the imperial board, Ji Tianqing silently left the crowd and stood in a corner to ponder. It's really about the disciple of God selection. Jojo mentioned this to me before. When she was rushing to the Clear Sky Pagoda, she accidentally entered the gate of Xianpin and met me. Unexpectedly, 10 months have passed, and the disciple of God selection is about to come to an end. The Chuyan Empire has already selected 15 geniuses. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but frown as many thoughts flashed through his mind. The disciple of God selection is a grand ceremony that occurs once every 20 years. Previously, when the prefecture master brought Yun Yao to the Shenwu continent, he gave her a 1-year deadline. Now that I think about it, the prefecture master sent Yun Yao to the Shenwu continent 3 months ago, when the disciple of God selection was about to begin. Could it be that the prefecture master was in a hurry to send Yun Yao here because of the disciple of God selection? Could Yun Yao also be in the Taihao Divine Kingdom? Could the mysterious powerhouse that the prefecture master is working for be martial god Taihao? Although these were all his guesses, he didn't have much evidence. However, after weighing the pros and cons for a while, he felt that it was possible. Anyway, I've just arrived in the Shenwu continent and have no place to stay. I also don't understand the situation on this continent. Even if I want to find Yao Yao, I don't know where to start. In that case, I'll take advantage of this disciple of God selection to find a way to enter the Clear Sky Pagoda. I have to investigate clearly to see if Yao Yao is there. Even if I can't find Yao Yao, I can ask Jojo for help. On this continent, I only know one person, Jojo, and she can be considered a friend. She seems to be from a wealthy family. If she's willing to help me find Yao Yao, it will definitely save me a lot of trouble and time. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing made up his mind. He would start from the ranking battle 3 days later and find a way to enter the Clear Sky Pagoda. Of course, what he needed to do now was to find out the relevant information about the ranking battle and investigate the identity and strength of the 15 geniuses. Chapter 1473. For 3 whole days, Ji Tianqing busied himself in Skycloud City, not resting at all. With his extraordinary intelligence and comprehension, he quickly learned the Shenwu continent's language and tried his best to find out more information. In just 3 days, he had a deeper understanding of the Outcloud Empire and Skycloud City. At the same time, he had also investigated the identity and strength of the 15 young geniuses. He also had a corresponding understanding of the upcoming ranking battles. After all, the ranking battles were no secret. The 15 young geniuses were well-known figures in the Outcloud Empire. Although young warriors of the right age could participate in the God-Disciple selection as long as they reached level 6 of the Spirit Refinement Realm or above. However, the 15 geniuses had stood out from thousands of other young warriors. They were all young powerhouses with extraordinary talent and strength. They had all reached the Primordial Spirit Realm, and even the weakest was at the 2nd level. And the 3 strongest geniuses had reached the 5th Firmament Essence Spirit Realm. When Ji Tianqing found out about this, he was shocked and surprised. He could not believe that the 15 young geniuses had broken through to the Primordial Spirit Realm in just a few decades. If this were the Tianqian continent, they would definitely be peerless geniuses that only appeared once in 1,000 years. Aside from him, no one else had reached the Primordial Spirit Realm in 100 years. Even the youngest Primordial Spirit powerhouse had to cultivate for a few hundred years. From this, it could be seen that the Shenwu continent was indeed a continent shrouded in divine light. Martial arts flourished, the world's spiritual energy was extremely dense, and cultivation resources were abundant. Compared to the Shenwu continent, the Tianqian continent was too backward. Soon the 4th day arrived. The ranking battles were about to begin, and Ji Tianqing's opportunity had arrived. Early in the morning, Skycloud City was bustling with noise and excitement. Hundreds of thousands of citizens flooded the city's plaza to watch the ranking battles. Every citizen was filled with anticipation and excitement as they whispered to each other about the 15 geniuses. Ji Tianqing followed the crowd and arrived at the city's plaza. The huge square with a radius of more than 10 miles was densely packed with people. At a glance, it was a sea of people. There were many guards in black armor around the plaza, all of them wielding swords and standing guard. This was the Imperial City, where the laws were strict and the commoners abided by the rules. Even if more than 600,000 people were gathered in the square and the noise was like a tsunami, there would not be any accidents or disturbances. In the middle of the square, there was a white circular stone platform floating in the air 1,000 feet above the ground. That stone platform had a radius of 10 miles. It was made of a special material and had a powerful defense. It served as the arena for the ranking battles. Several extremely powerful formations supported the arena with an invisible force, allowing it to float in the air as stable as Mount Tai. The hundreds of thousands of people in the square were all looking up at the huge arena. Their faces were filled with anticipation as they discussed enthusiastically. Not long after, several young experts in different attire flew over the heads of the commoners and landed in the empty area below the arena. There were a total of 7 young experts, 5 men and 2 women. All of them had strength at the Essence Soul Realm. There was a 2-meter-tall brawny man wearing a solemn-looking armor. His face was dignified, and his whole body was emitting a cold aura. There was also a skinny, fair-skinned youth wearing a fiery red long robe. His sleeves and hair were decorated with decorations, making him look rather energetic. There was also a dark-skinned middle-aged man wearing tight leather armor and a leather jacket. There were a few copper chains around his body, giving him a fierce aura. In short, these people were of different ages, appearances, and attire. They all had their own personalities and left a deep impression. When the commoners in the square saw the arrival of the 7 young experts, they immediately erupted into enthusiastic cheers. Many of the excited commoners were even cheering the names of the geniuses, cheering them on. Clearly, these 7 people were the young geniuses who were about to participate in the ranking battles. Ji Tianqing stood quietly in the crowd as he swept his indifferent gaze across the 7 people. After a few glances, he lost interest. After all, these 7 people were between the 2nd and 4th tier of the Essence Soul Realm. He had no interest in them. As time passed, streams of light streaked across the sky and landed below the arena in the middle of the square. Young geniuses arrived one after another, inciting cheers and shouts from the commoners. Ji Tianqing would take a few glances at every young genius that arrived and compare them with the information he had gathered to confirm their identities. Finally, the 13th young genius arrived. He was a bald, brawny man who was more than 2 meters tall. His body was as black as iron, and his aura was extremely cold. He wore a black leather vest and a pair of black shorts. On the outside, he wore a wide black cloak. There was a picture embroidered on the cloak. It was a ferocious dragon baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. His squarish and dark face was filled with coldness and indifference. His bell-sized eyes flickered with a sharp aura, and his entire body was shrouded in cold, killing intent. When Ji Tianqing saw his appearance, he muttered to himself, "Kuang Long, a martial artist who has been at the 5th tier of the Essence Soul Realm for 67 years. He has a cold and ruthless personality and is one of the top 3 geniuses." Indeed, when Kuang Long appeared in the middle of the square, countless commoners shouted his name in excitement. "Kuang Long! Look, Kuang Long is here." "Ha! I have finally seen Kuang Long's true face. It is said that Kuang Long is the 2nd genius of our Chu Yun Empire. It is a pity that we have not been able to verify this. Today, he is going to compete with Yin Wu Quebec. We will soon know who is stronger." The discussions in the square continued for a long time. Everyone's eyes were focused on Kuang Long. Only when a white lightning bolt streaked across the sky and appeared in the middle of the square did the crowd stop their discussions. Swoosh! The white lightning dissipated, and a young man dressed in a long, snow-white robe appeared below the arena. He had a delicate figure and fair skin. This person's height was similar to Ji Tianqing's. However, he was slim and his skin was as fair as jade. His face was delicate and beautiful. What left the deepest impression was that he had not only put on makeup, but he was also holding a jade umbrella that was half black and half white. His movements were graceful and charming. If one did not observe carefully, one would think that this was a beautiful woman in her prime. However, Ji Tianqing sized him up indifferently. He muttered to himself, "Yin Wu Kei, the 2nd genius of the Chu Yun Empire. He has been at the 5th tier of the Essence Soul Realm for 60 years. That strange black and white jade umbrella in his hand is the treasure that made him famous, the Yin Yang umbrella." Many commoners in the square stared at Yin Wu Kei, who had just arrived. They began to discuss him excitedly. Yin Wu Kei ignored everyone in the square. He turned his head to look at Kuang Long and greeted him with a smile. "Kuang Long, be careful of your head. I will not go easy on you later." Chapter 1474. Yin Wu's features were too distinct, and everyone had an unforgettable memory. What was strange was that his feminine and charming demeanor and actions did not seem pretentious at all. Instead, they matched his aura very well. The surrounding geniuses all looked at Yin Wu and Kuang Long with complicated expressions and playful gazes. Kuang Long slowly turned his head and coldly glanced at Yin Wu. His tone was cold and murderous as he said, "Hermaphrodite, I will personally break your neck." When he said this, his expression was not ferocious, but rather, it was as if he was stating a fact. However, the surrounding geniuses all felt a sharp and cold aura, and they could not help but shiver. Just as Kuang Long and Yin Wu were facing off against each other and secretly competing with their auras, another dazzling ray of light flew over from the distant sky. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, the dazzling ray of light landed below the arena, revealing a tall woman in a blue dress. This woman's height was similar to Ji Tianqing's, and her figure was graceful and alluring. Her luxurious, ice-blue dress was decorated with a few icicle flower patterns and dozens of sparkling icicle blue feather diamonds. Tassels were embroidered on her collar and sleeves. Her long, grayish-white hair was tied up with a simple silver ribbon, and it flowed down her back all the way to her waist. Her face was fair and beautiful, and her clear, large eyes flickered with a cold and deep splendor. Regardless of whether it was the Shenwu continent's aesthetic standards or Ji Tianqing's own, she was an absolute beauty with an icy temperament that was both noble and cold. When she appeared, the gazes of the hundreds of thousands of people in the plaza all gathered on her, unable to take their eyes off her. The surrounding geniuses also revealed looks of reverence as they stared at her. She expressionlessly glanced at Kuang Long and Wu Kei, then said with a cold and emotionless tone, "No matter how much you fight, you are just 2 pieces of trash." What an arrogant woman. Kuang Long and Yin Wu were extremely famous in the Outcloud Empire, and they were the top 3 martial geniuses of the younger generation. However, this blue-dressed woman did not place them in her eyes at all, and she even dared to look down on them right in front of them. However, Even though Kuang Long and Wu Kei were furious and embarrassed, they didn't dare to show it on the surface. Both of them suppressed their anger, sneered, and retorted with neither light nor heavy words. Humph. Lan Yiqing, the ranking battle hasn't started yet. It's still unknown who will win. You have yet to break through to the 6th level of the primordial soul realm. What are you so proud of? However, their counterattack seemed somewhat powerless. Lan Yiqing didn't care at all. He didn't look at the two of them anymore. He stood there expressionlessly, waiting for the ranking battle to begin. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing stared at Lan Yiqing seriously, sizing him up. Lan Yiqing, the undisputed #1 youth genius. He has cultivated for 40 years and has reached the 5th firmament essence soul realm. He is about to break through to the 6th firmament essence soul realm. It's said that this woman has a mysterious background. Many nobles in the Chuyun Empire don't dare to offend her. He murmured in his heart as he quietly observed Lan Yiqing's mannerisms. He wanted to know her strength and background. To Ji Tianqing, the 12 ordinary geniuses were no threat at all. Only Wu Kei, Kuang Long, and Lan Yiqing were worthy of his attention. Among the three of them, Lan Yiqing was the strongest. Her background was the most mysterious, and she was his #1 opponent. In the Tianqian continent, with my strength at the 4th firmament essence soul realm, I can fight against a 6th or 7th firmament essence soul realm cultivator. However, in the Xinwu continent, there are many geniuses. The martial way is also very diverse. Lan Yiqing and the other two's auras are much stronger than mine. Ji Tianqing pondered silently. His eyes grew more serious and cautious. At this moment, a 7-colored auspicious cloud was flying over from the northwest of the square. On the rainbow cloud, which was about 10 feet wide, stood 10 middle-aged cultivators. They were dressed in luxurious clothes and had powerful auras. The leader was a tall and burly middle-aged man with a dignified appearance. He wore a dark golden robe with the sun, moon, stars, and divine dragons embroidered on it. The edges of his robe and sleeves were lined with gold. He wore an exquisite crown on his head. He stood tall and straight on the cloud as he looked ahead expressionlessly. His body exuded a majestic aura, as if he could control the heavens and earth. He was as powerful as a god. Ji Tianqing's gaze was immediately attracted to this person. He felt that this person's strength was unfathomable. He had reached an extremely terrifying realm. At the same time, the hundreds of thousands of citizens in the plaza bowed respectfully. "Welcome, Sage Emperor." Everyone shouted in unison. The sound waves gathered into an invisible torrent that resounded throughout the entire heavenly cloud city. Ji Tianqing immediately understood. The godlike golden-robed man was Emperor Chu Yun, a martial sage expert. A martial sage was an expert above the 9th tribulation realm. After transcending the 9th tribulation, one could escape the cycle of reincarnation, transcend mortality, become immortal, and control the heavens and earth. They were martial sages. Before this, Ji Tianqing had only heard that there were 9th tribulation and martial sages above the essence soul realm. However, he had never seen them before. Now, he finally saw a true martial sage expert. He was immediately subdued by Emperor Chu Yun's sacred aura. Envy and yearning grew in his heart. When can I reach his level? Stand proudly on the clouds, look down on all living beings in the world, and summon clouds and rain with a flip of my hand? Behind Emperor Chu Yun stood a white-haired elder in a purple robe. He held a dark golden scroll in his left hand and a large black brush in his right. This elder's clothes fluttered in the wind. He looked ordinary on the surface, but his aura was restrained and merged with the heavens and earth. Ji Tianqing could sense that this elder's strength had also reached the martial sage realm. However, the elder was slightly weaker than Emperor Chu Yun. His aura did not appear sacred and majestic. He had the aura of an otherworldly expert. He immediately guessed that this purple-robed elder was most likely the sage master of the Chu Yun Empire. He was a sage who assisted Emperor Chu Yun in governing the empire. Apart from Emperor Chu Yun and the sage master, there were 8 other experts standing on the auspicious cloud. The 8 of them had clearly not reached the martial sage realm, but they were dozens of times stronger than the essence soul realm. They were likely 9th tribulation realm experts. Ji Tianqing saw that these people were dignified, and noble. He guessed that they were the top nobles of the Chuyun Empire. Before long, the rainbow auspicious cloud flew to the middle of the square and floated 1,000 feet in the air. The hundreds of thousands of citizens in all directions bowed deeply, maintaining a pious and respectful expression. Even the 15 proud young geniuses kept their backs bent, not daring to stand up. Their expressions were filled with reverence. Emperor Chu Yun swept his dignified gaze across the crowd before raising his hands, indicating for everyone to rise. Chapter 1475. The Emperor of the Chu Yun Empire said a few words to express the importance of the ranking battle. The god's disciple selection was related to the Chu Yun Empire's reputation and glory. As the Holy Emperor, he had to personally host the battle. In addition, the Holy Master and 8 generals of the Chu Yun Empire, as well as the powerful warriors from the major families and sects, would supervise the battle together. After the Emperor of the Chu Yun Empire finished speaking, the Holy Master announced the rules of the ranking battle. The 15 geniuses had already participated in the competition a few days ago. The Holy Master and the powerful warriors present could clearly see everyone's strength and combat strength. Therefore, the rules of the ranking battle were a bit strange. It was different from an ordinary battle. The Holy Master would give the 15 young geniuses a preliminary ranking based on his evaluation. If anyone was not satisfied with the ranking, they could challenge one of the geniuses on the spot. If they won, they could replace that geniuses on the ranking. During the battle, the use of battle pets was prohibited. Injuries were allowed, but no deaths were allowed. Hearing the Holy Master announce the rules of the ranking battle, the hundreds of thousands of people in the plaza were surprised and curious. They were full of anticipation. Then, under everyone's gaze, the Holy Master waved the brush in his hand and shot out 15 balls of golden light. The 15 balls of golden light flew up into the sky and immediately turned into the names of the 15 geniuses. They were ranked from top to bottom. Everyone in the square raised their heads to look at the sky, checking the rankings of the geniuses. The name at the top of the list was Lan Yiqing. She was publicly recognized as the number 1 genius. No one had any objections. The second was Yin Wuk, and the third was Quang Long. Seeing the rankings, the hundreds of thousands of people showed complicated expressions. They started to whisper to each other. Wu Kei smiled as he glanced at Quang Long with a mocking look in his eyes. Quang Long's face turned gloomy. His eyes shone with a fierce light as he glared at Yin Wuk. As for the rankings from the 4th to the 15th, many people did not care. Among the dozen or so young geniuses, many expressed their agreement, but there were also a few who were not convinced and looked eager to give it a try. After a while, the Holy Master waved the brush and signaled for everyone to quiet down. Then, he pointed at the floating arena behind him and announced in a dignified voice, "If anyone has any objections to the rankings, you can step onto the arena now and challenge your ideal ranking. However, each person only has 3 chances to challenge, so you must consider it carefully." Following the sacred expert's words, the plaza immediately erupted with world-shaking cheers and shouts. "Mad Dragon! Mad Dragon! Mad Dragon, it's time to prove yourself. Go and challenge Wu Kei. Let's see who is the number 2 genius." Clearly, the hundreds of thousands of spectators were most concerned about this problem. Everyone wanted to see who was stronger, Yin Wu Kei or Mad Dragon. However, Quang Long suppressed his anger for the time being and did not step onto the stage first. The first to enter the arena was the 15th-ranked genius. She was a red-dressed woman wielding 2 sabers and had strength at the 2nd firmament primordial spirit realm. When she flew into the sky and landed on the arena, countless people were watching her. Everyone felt that the ranking given by the Sage Master basically wouldn't have any deviation. The woman in red didn't want to be ranked at the bottom, so she went up the stage to challenge. Everyone guessed that she was going to challenge the 14th-ranked genius. If she could advance by 1 rank, at least she wouldn't be at the bottom, and her reputation would be better. However, no one expected the woman in red to challenge the 12th-ranked genius. The genius being challenged was a skinny young man whose strength was at the pinnacle of the 2nd firmament primordial spirit realm. Most people felt that the woman in red's challenge would probably end in failure. However, the 2 of them exchanged more than 100 blows on the floating arena before the victor was decided. The result was beyond everyone's expectations. The woman in red used an ultimate move that she had never used before and defeated her opponent, successfully advancing to the 12th rank. This result shocked and incredulous the hundreds of thousands of spectators. At the same time, the crowd also understood that the preliminary ranking given by the Sage Master might not be accurate. After all, the Sage Master ranked the geniuses based on their previous performance. Some geniuses kept a low profile and did not display their true strength or ultimate moves in the previous grand tournament. Thinking of this, the crowd became even more interested in the battle between Mad Dragon and Wu Quebec. After the woman in red left the arena, Mad Dragon flew into the arena amidst the cheers of the crowd. The spectators in the square were in an uproar as they erupted into tsunami-like cheers. Countless people were agitated as they shouted the names of Mad Dragon and Wu Quebec. There was no need for Mad Dragon to say anything. Everyone knew who he was going to challenge. Hence, Wu K also flew into the sky and landed on the arena with a smile on his face. He and Mad Dragon stood on the arena, and after exchanging a few sarcastic words, they quickly gathered their strength and aura and launched their attacks. Both of them knew that this battle was of utmost importance as it concerned their reputation and future. They used all their strength right from the start and used their strongest ultimate moves. They wanted to defeat each other in the most elegant and domineering way possible. Only in this way could the news of this battle spread throughout the Chuyun Empire and their reputations be known by the world. The two of them released a vast amount of mana that condensed into various lights and shadows. They released a dazzling 7-colored brilliance that covered 100 miles of the sky. Destructive spells and ultimate skills collided wantonly in the sky, creating loud rumbling noises that shook the heavens. The incomparably violent shockwaves continuously battered the defensive light shield of the arena, causing the entire arena to shake violently. The spectators were dazzled by the spectacle as they erupted into cheers and shouts. Ji Tianqing stood in the crowd and observed silently for a long time. Gradually, he figured out what was going on. Wu K and Mad Dragon are indeed the strongest young geniuses of the Chuyun Empire. Even though they are only at the 5th level of the primordial soul realm, they are able to unleash a battle prowess that is comparable to a 6th level primordial soul realm cultivator. Furthermore, their martial arts foundations are extremely firm and their mana is boundless. The ultimate moves and secret techniques that they are using are also mysterious and profound. I have never seen them before. After a full 15 minutes, Mad Dragon and Wu K had exchanged a few hundred blows before the victor was decided. The result was just like the ranking of the Sage Masters. Mad Dragon was defeated by Wu K by a single blow. Immediately, the square was filled with cheers. Mad Dragon retreated from the arena with a dejected expression, while Wu K smiled proudly at the crowd. After Wu K left the arena, the square was in an uproar for a long time. However, no one else went up to challenge him. After 100 breaths of time, the Sage Masters saw that the geniuses were still hesitating and asked loudly, "Is there no one else who wants to challenge me? Do you have any objections to my ranking?" Chapter 1476. The hundreds of thousands of people in the plaza stared at the empty space below the arena. Everyone's gaze was focused on the dozen or so geniuses. No one had expected that someone would fly out of the crowd and head straight for the arena. Immediately, countless people looked at Ji Tianqing with puzzled and astonished expressions. They began to whisper to each other. Who's that guy? This is a ranking battle for the 15 geniuses. What's that guy doing in the arena? Is that kid here to cause trouble? He actually dares to interfere in a ranking battle for the god disciples. Isn't he afraid of death? Yes, the Sage Emperor and the Sage Master are supervising the battle, but this guy still dares to cause trouble. He must be tired of living. Everyone look at that kid carefully. He seems a little strange. He doesn't look like someone from the Outcloud Empire. His clothes and the style of his hair are a little strange. Is he a foreigner from another empire? Countless people's discussions converged into a torrent of sound waves that reverberated above the plaza. Almost everyone was puzzled and questioned Ji Tianqing's identity and purpose. Many people revealed expressions of schadenfreude, as if they were waiting for a good show to unfold. Below the arena, the dozen or so young geniuses frowned and sized up Ji Tianqing with complicated expressions. Whoosh! With a flash of golden light, Ji Tianqing landed in the floating arena. He stood calmly in the middle of the arena, his body as straight as a sword. His entire body naturally exuded the confidence and arrogance of a genius powerhouse. The Outcloud Emperor, the Sage Master, and the 8 powerhouses revealed strange expressions and frowned as they sized up Ji Tianqing. One of them, a middle-aged man dressed in silver armor who seemed to be a general, asked in a dignified voice, "Kid, who are you?" Why did you barge into the arena and offend the sage emperor? Ji Tianqing understood about 80% of the man's words and roughly understood what he was trying to say. Thus, he bowed to Emperor Izumo, the sage master, and the others on the rainbow clouds in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. He then spoke in the language of the Shinwu continent. Greetings, Sage Emperor and Sage Master. I've come here to challenge the rankings. In the past 3 days, he had quickly mastered the Shinwu continent's language with his great wisdom and comprehension. However, the time was too short, and he could only grasp a few simple words. Thus, his speech was very short, and his accent was somewhat awkward. When the Outcloud Emperor, the Sage Master, and the 8 powerhouses heard his words, they immediately frowned. The dozen or so young geniuses below the arena and many of the commoners in the square all revealed strange expressions as they started to discuss. This guy is really weird. His accent is really weird. I can tell from his accent that he's definitely not from our Chu Yun Empire. He's not even a subject of Lord Taihao's rule. Is this guy crazy? Is Shinwu of Shinwu continents? Men, take this kid down and behead him immediately. The silver-armored general waved his hand, and a group of guards around the arena flew into the sky to capture Ji Tianqing. Seeing this, countless people revealed gloating smiles. Ji Tianqing's expression did not change, and he remained calm. He looked directly at the Outcloud Emperor and said in a sonorous tone, I admire the Outcloud Emperor's reputation. I heard that the Outcloud Emperor thirsts for talents and is benevolent and wise, so I came here. I didn't expect the Outcloud Emperor to treat a talent like this. It's really disappointing. His expression and tone were very cold and filled with deep disappointment. There was even a trace of contempt. Together with his awkward accent and choice of words, this sentence immediately made Great Emperor Chu Yun and the sacred expert's expressions change, their brows furrowing fiercely. The Outcloud Emperor waved his sleeves and ordered sternly, stand down. The group of guards who had just rushed into the arena immediately obeyed and retreated. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing's expression did not change, but he was laughing in his heart. Ha, I made the right bet. Previously, when I was investigating in the city, I heard that the Outcloud Emperor rejoiced in grandiose achievements and tried his best to curry favor with martial god Taihao. Therefore, he acted as if he was thirsty for talents and wanted to recruit talents. In order to snatch the martial Dao geniuses from other countries, he did not hesitate to spend a huge amount of cultivation resources and paid a huge price. Without a doubt, Ji Tianqing came to participate in the ranking battle and stepped into the arena in front of everyone. He was naturally prepared. He had already investigated the Outcloud Emperor's character and understood the situation. That was why he took such a risk. As it turned out, he had succeeded. The Outcloud Emperor looked down at him and sized him up with a sharp gaze. He asked sternly, "What's your name?" Ji Tianqing. The Outcloud Emperor nodded slightly and asked again, "From your accent, you're not a citizen of the Outcloud Empire?" Ji Tianqing replied calmly, "I came from afar to seek a future in the name of the Outcloud Emperor." The Outcloud Emperor raised his eyebrows and continued to ask, "Then which country are you from?" A hero does not ask where he came from. I have always roamed the world. Ji Tianqing lied without blinking, looking proud and arrogant. In addition, his words were concise and to the point, and his temperament was cold. Instantly, everyone felt that he was a cold and arrogant expert. The geniuses below the arena discussed among themselves with complicated expressions. Wu Kei and Lan Yiqing looked at him with interest and observed him silently. The Outcloud Emperor's lips curled into a playful smile. He looked at Ji Tianqing and asked again, "You dare to call yourself a genius and a hero in front of me? How courageous. All right, I'll give you a chance today just because you're not afraid of death." When the hundreds of thousands of citizens in the square heard what the Outcloud Emperor said, they were in disbelief and exclaimed. The Holy Sovereign and the 8 powerful experts were also shocked. They wanted to stop the Outcloud Emperor. "Saint Emperor, you can't do this. Saint Emperor, please reconsider. We don't know where this person came from. You don't have to be so polite to him. Saint Emperor, this is unfair to the geniuses of our country." The Outcloud Emperor did not listen to their advice. He waved his hand domineeringly and said, "Everyone in the world knows that I am thirsty for talents. I am courteous to the wise and only want to choose the best disciples for the Divine Master. Now that such a proud man has come in my name and wants to prove his talent in front of all the citizens, How can I reject him? Do you want me to be a person who goes back on his words? The holy sovereign and the other powerful experts were speechless. They could not persuade the outglowed emperor anymore. Ji Tianqing quickly cupped his hands and bowed. The Saint Emperor is wise. Thank you. Chapter 1477. Originally, the 8 lords and the dozen or so young geniuses weren't too happy about this. However, when they heard Emperor Chu Yun's words, they knew that things weren't that simple. An outsider who dared to challenge the sage emperor's authority wouldn't have a good ending. As expected, under everyone's expectant gazes, Great Emperor Chu Yun said coldly, Ji Tianqing, I can give you a chance to participate in the ranking battle. You can challenge the ideal ranking. If you can defeat your opponent, you can replace him. However, if you lose, regardless of whether you are injured or not, I will kill you on the spot as punishment for challenging my authority. After saying that, his lips curled into a cold smile. He looked at Ji Tianqing sharply and asked, Do you still dare to challenge me? The hundreds of thousands of people in the square burst into laughter and discussions. The people then knew that Emperor Chu Yun wasn't someone to be trifled with. How could he be used so easily? Ji Tianqing dared to challenge the sage emperor's authority and break the rules of the ranking battle. He had to bear the risk of being killed. More than 10 young geniuses and 8 powerful experts all revealed mocking sneers as they looked at Ji Tianqing with playful eyes. Everyone firmly believed that if it was anyone else, they would hesitate under such circumstances and might even give up. However, they didn't expect Ji Tianqing to remain calm. He nodded his head without hesitation and said firmly, I dare. Just one word, but it was filled with confidence and dominance. Instantly, the entire square was in an uproar. The hundreds of thousands of people exclaimed in disgust. They were excited and passionate. Ha ha, this lad isn't afraid of death. This lad is too arrogant. He is so confident in front of the sage emperor. He doesn't know his place. The ignorant are fearless. This lad is an outsider. He probably doesn't know what the sage emperor means. This lad is dead. When he loses, the sage emperor can kill him with one finger. The young geniuses all laughed at Sumo's misfortune and waited to see a good show. Only Yin Wu Kei and Lan Yiqing stared at Ji Tianqing. Their eyes sparkled. Yin Wu Kei gently spun the yin-yang umbrella, licked his lips and muttered, This kid is interesting. I like him. Mad Dragon, who was not far away, heard his words and muttered disdainfully, Sorcerer, disgusting. Yin Wu Kei pretended that he didn't hear anything. He couldn't be bothered with him and continued to size up Ji Tianqing. Lan Yiqing didn't say anything. She maintained the image of an ice beauty, and no one dared to approach within 30 feet of her. However, she was also secretly observing Ji Tianqing. Her eyes were deep and sharp, as if she wanted to see through Ji Tianqing. Soon the crowd quieted down. The sage master continued to preside over the ranking battle and said with a dignified expression, Ji Tianqing, choose the opponent you want to challenge. Ji Tianqing looked up at the 15 golden lights in the sky. His gaze landed on the third name, and he said expressionlessly, Let's start with Mad Dragon. Instantly, the hundreds of thousands of people were stunned. They couldn't believe what they were seeing and exclaimed, Oh my God! Is this brat crazy? He's too arrogant. The sage emperor gave him a chance, but he wants to challenge the third person? Isn't he asking for death? This kid looks like he's about to die. Who does he think he is? He wants to challenge the third genius of our country? He's too ignorant. Did everyone hear that? He said to start with Mad Dragon. Does he think that he can defeat Mad Dragon and continue to challenge him? This isn't arrogance or ignorance. He knows that he's going to die. He's going crazy before he dies. The spectators were in an uproar. The young geniuses also had interesting expressions on their faces. Especially Mad Dragon, who looked as if he had been greatly humiliated. His face was ashen, and his eyes were filled with ferocity. He clenched his fists so tightly that they creaked. He stared coldly at Ji Tianqing and shouted, Arrogant kid, I'll crush your head. After saying that, he flew up into the sky with a whoosh and landed on the arena. The two of them stood 1,000 feet apart on the arena. Mad Dragon's body was tall, and his aura was very fierce. He twisted his body and the copper chains on his body, like a fierce tiger that was about to be released from its cage. He was murderous. In comparison, Ji Tianqing's body was much thinner. He stood expressionlessly on the arena. His footsteps were casual, and his body was relaxed as if he was defenseless. In the eyes of most people, he couldn't be compared to Mad Dragon at all. He would definitely die. Mad Dragon stared at him ferociously and shouted in a low voice, "Kid, how dare you challenge me? This is an insult to me. Today, there's no need for the Holy Emperor to kill you. I'll crush your head and balls in front of everyone." Ji Tianqing only understood half of it. He said expressionlessly, "You talk a lot of nonsense." Such short and cold words were the most powerful counterattack. It made Mad Dragon even more furious. "Kid, you're too arrogant. Go to hell." Mad Dragon roared with a ferocious face. His body was burning with anger. He waved his fists and punched at Ji Tianqing. Two dazzling flames streaked across the sky and condensed into two giant dragons that were hundreds of feet long. They charged at Ji Tianqing. In order to wash away his shame, Mad Dragon used all his strength. He wanted to kill Ji Tianqing in one move to vent his anger. Ji Tianqing didn't hold back either. He immediately used all his strength and punched out with both fists. Star-shattering fist. At that moment, his body lit up with a dazzling golden light. He burst out with a powerful aura that swept up an invisible hurricane in the arena. His white robe flapped fiercely. His aura was extremely powerful. In an instant, he changed from an ordinary white-robed young man to an overbearing powerhouse. Two massive dark golden fist projections, imbued with the power to annihilate heaven and earth, viciously crashed toward the two giant dragons. Boom! When the star-shattering fist collided with the two giant dragons, there was an earth-shaking explosion in the arena. Such a loud explosion could be heard clearly from hundreds of miles away. The arena within a radius of 10 miles also shook violently from the impact. The white light barrier that enveloped the entire arena also trembled from the impact, rippling with layers of ripples. Under the shocked and incredulous eyes of countless people, the two giant fire dragons were smashed into pieces. Mad Dragon was also hit by the star-shattering fist. He spat out blood and flew backward. He was sent flying backward for a distance of 20,000 feet. Then he crashed heavily into the white light barrier. A muffled bang sound was heard. After that, he fell onto the arena. When he got up from the ground, his clothes were ragged and his face was covered in blood. He staggered and could barely stand. The third genius of the Outcloud Empire was sent flying by Ji Tianqing with one punch. Chapter 1478. This sudden turn of events caused the square to become deathly silent. Not only were the hundreds of thousands of citizens stunned, but the young geniuses were also dumbfounded. Even the 8 influential experts, the Sacred Master, and the Chu-Yun Emperor on the 7-colored auspicious cloud were astonished. Their eyes flickered with radiance. No one dared to believe that the seemingly ordinary outsider had such terrifying strength. At this moment, everyone suddenly understood. No wonder that kid boasted shamelessly and called himself a genius and a hero. No wonder he dared to challenge the sage emperor so confidently. No wonder he skipped the 12 geniuses and directly challenged Kuang Long, who was ranked 3rd. He was cold and arrogant, but he had the right to be arrogant. After a while, the hundreds of thousands of citizens came back to their senses. They all burst into exclamations and excitedly discussed. Emperor Chu-Yun, Sage Master, and the others' eyes were also filled with interest. Their expressions were playful. In the arena, Kuang Long had suffered great humiliation. He was so angry that he almost went crazy. He raised his arm to wipe the blood off his face. With a roar, he attacked again. This time, he used his trump card with all his strength. Heaven-locking chain. As he roared, he tore off the 8 copper chains wrapped around his body and summoned his primordial spirit Dharma idol. A fiery, illusory figure that was thousands of feet tall appeared in the sky behind him. It was a fiery red dragon with 3 heads and 8 claws. Its appearance was ferocious and hideous, like an ancient beast. The 8 copper chains flew into the sky and turned into huge chains that were thousands of feet long. They were held by the fiery red dragon's 8 claws. Swoosh! 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 The fiery red dragon roared and waved the 8 huge chains in a frenzy, sweeping them toward Ji Tianqing. Instantly, the sky within a 10-mile radius was covered by the chains. The entire arena was covered by a huge net formed by the chains. It emitted a terrifying aura that could suppress everything as it blasted toward Ji Tianqing. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing's expression was still indifferent. He was calm as usual. A black light flashed in his right hand, and he took out the sword of burial of heaven. He swung the divine sword with all his might and slashed at Kuang Long heaven-breaking sword. Endless dermic powers surged into the heaven-barrier sword and slashed out a giant golden sword that was thousands of feet long. The sacred golden light enveloped the entire arena and illuminated the sky for dozens of miles. The peerlessly terrifying sword chi cut through the sky and the white light barrier wantonly, leaving streaks of white marks in the sky and the barrier. Bam! 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 Amidst a series of muffled sounds, the golden sword slashed away several chains and then hit the fiery red dragon. Boom! The fiery red dragon was slashed by the giant sword on the spot. Its 3 dragon claws were chopped off, and fiery red fragments burst out from its body. It let out a painful howl as it was sent flying backward while rolling on the ground. Mad Dragon's nascent divinity and Dharma idol were severely wounded, and so was his true body. He was sent flying away with blood spurting out from his 7 orifices. Bam! This time, his entire body was covered in blood, and he struggled for a few moments before crawling up. His aura was already extremely weak, and his combat strength had been reduced by half. The fiery red dragon Kuang Long's essence spirit Dharma also retreated back into his body. The golden light and fiery light that filled the sky finally dissipated. The arena regained its clarity. The hundreds of thousands of citizens in the square were dumbfounded. They looked as though they had seen a ghost. More than a dozen young geniuses and 8 powerful figures were dumbfounded. Their eyes shone brightly. Without a doubt, Kuang Long had been defeated. Ji Tianqing had only used 2 moves to severely injure Kuang Long and defeat him on the spot. What kind of terrifying strength was that? Many people even suspected that this person's strength exceeded Kuang Long's, and that he had reached the 6th firmament essence spirit realm. Otherwise, how could he defeat Kuang Long so easily without even using his essence spirit Dharma characteristic? At that moment, Kuang Long stumbled forward again. He dragged a few ancient copper chains in his hands and wanted to launch another attack. Ji Tianqing stood proudly in the middle of the arena. His left hand was behind his back, and his right hand was pointing diagonally to the ground. He said indifferently, "Admit defeat. Otherwise you will die." His words were as short as ever and his tone was cold. However, the hundreds of thousands of people in the square did not care about his awkward accent. They could feel his unparalleled confidence and dominance. He was too arrogant and domineering. At that moment, many young warriors felt their hearts stir. They had goosebumps all over and their blood was boiling. Countless people looked up at Ji Tianqing's figure. The same thought flashed through their minds. When can I be like him, looking down on everyone and being domineering? When Kuang Long heard Ji Tianqing's words, he did not stop. Instead, he became even more furious. He had never suffered such humiliation in his life. It was worse than death. However, just as he was about to attack, a dignified roar sounded. "Stop!" Kuang Long looked up at the rainbow auspicious clouds and saw the sage master staring at him expressionlessly. "Kuang Long, you have already lost. Back down." Kuang Long naturally knew that the sage master was protecting him. If he continued to fight, he would only lose more miserably and his injuries would be even more severe. No matter how angry and unwilling he was, he did not dare to disobey the sage master's orders. He could only grit his teeth and suppress his anger as he left the stage. Not long ago, he had been defeated by Yin Wu Kei and humiliated in front of everyone. Now he was defeated by a nameless kid who had appeared out of nowhere. He had been defeated even more miserably. He had never been so unlucky in his life. He had lost the face of his entire life in one day. He was so depressed that he vomited blood. At this moment, the sage master announced the result with a solemn expression under the instructions of Great Emperor Chu Yun. Ji Tianqing wins. He replaces Kuang Long and is ranked 3rd. Kuang Long's ranking drops to 4th. The rest of the people will be promoted by 1 place. The 15th place will be eliminated. As he spoke, the sage master waved his brush and pointed out a few golden lights. All of a sudden, the 15 golden lights hanging high in the sky underwent a new change. Ji Tianqing's name was ranked 3rd, shining with golden light. The hundreds of thousands of people in the square still felt that it was a dream. They were still discussing it. The 15th place young genius was dumbfounded. His expression kept changing. He had thought that even if he was ranked last, he would still be able to become an honorable god's disciple. However, he did not expect that the honor and status that he was about to obtain would be gone just like that. A few young geniuses looked at him with sympathy and gloating. This made him so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. After a long while, the square gradually quieted down. Ji Tianqing was still standing on the stage. He had no intention of leaving. The sage master frowned and asked in a deep voice, "Ji Tianqing, you have already won the challenge. Why are you still here?" Chapter 1479. When Ji Tianqing's voice reverberated throughout the entire plaza fell silent. Countless people revealed looks of shock as they looked at him in disbelief. No one dared to believe that he would be so confident and arrogant. He had already defeated Quang Long. Could it be that he still wanted to challenge Yin Wuke? Everyone revealed looks of anticipation as they started to discuss among themselves. On the rainbow clouds, Great Emperor Chu Yun, Sage Master, and the 8 powerful experts all revealed looks of amusement as they looked at Ji Tianqing with interest. Sage Master frowned slightly as he said expressionlessly, "Ji Tianqing, who do you want to challenge?" Ji Tianqing stared at the ranking board in the sky as he said calmly, "Yin Wu Quebec." Hearing this name, everyone revealed an expression of as expected. On the empty ground below the arena, Yin Wu Ke raised his eyebrows as he revealed a mocking smile. "This fellow is getting more and more interesting." He muttered in a low voice and leaped toward the ring. The hundreds of thousands of people in the plaza started to discuss enthusiastically. "That fellow is too confident. He actually challenged Quang Long and Yin Wu Ke consecutively. This year's God-disciple selection is really full of twists and turns. It's really exciting. Even at the final ranking battle, something like this can still happen." That's right. No one would have thought that this fellow would appear out of nowhere and disrupt the ranking battle. He even defeated Quang Long. It's really unbelievable. Ji Tianqing was able to defeat Quang Long because he was lucky. However, he can forget about defeating Yin Wu Quebec. He will definitely lose this battle. Some people looked as if they were watching a show. Some people were shocked by Ji Tianqing's abilities and hoped that he could create another miracle. However, most people felt that he was too arrogant and that he was definitely not Yin Wu Ke's match. He was about to lose. Under everyone's gazes, Yin Wu Ke landed on the arena and stood 1,000 feet away from Ji Tianqing. Yin Wu Ke spun the Yin Yang umbrella as he sized up Ji Tianqing with a smile. He said in a mocking tone, "Ji Tianqing, right? Let's get to know each other. My name is Yin Wu Ke from the Flower Moon Palace." When he spoke of his identity, his tone was full of confidence, and there was a touch of unconcealable pride in his eyes. Obviously, the Flower Moon Palace he spoke of was a powerful force with an extraordinary status. However, Ji Tianqing was not interested in this. He looked at him indifferently. After he finished speaking, he asked, "Can we begin?" Wu Ke's face froze. He frowned and said with a smile, "Little brother, you are too impatient. I'm not an idiot like Mad Dragon. If you want to use me as a stepping stone to become famous, you're destined to return disappointed." As he spoke, his entire body lit up with a dazzling white light, bursting with an incomparably valiant aura. Shwa! His figure flashed and disappeared on the spot. He teleported 1,000 feet away and appeared in front of Ji Tianqing out of thin air. He held the Yin and Yang umbrella with both hands and thrust it toward Ji Tianqing's chest. His movements and demeanor made it seem as if he was about to throw himself into Ji Tianqing's embrace. "Little brother, let's get intimate." The Yin and Yang umbrella shone with a dazzling white light, forming a dazzling white sword. It was about to pierce Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing's expression did not change. He immediately pulled out the sword of Burial of Heaven with his right hand and slashed out with all his might. He pulled out his sword. The pitch-black sword of Burial of Heaven shone with a dazzling golden light. It formed a huge golden sword and slashed towards Wu Quebec. Boom. The two sword lights clashed violently and exploded with a loud thud. Violent shockwaves exploded on the stage. The golden light and the white light collapsed at the same time and quickly dissipated in the air. The powerful force of the impact sent Yin Wu Ke flying 6,000 feet away, smashing into the edge of the arena. However, while he was still flying in the air, he opened up the Yin and Yang umbrella and immediately dissolved the impact. He landed on the stage lightly. "Little brother, you are so refined. How can you be so rough? This is not likable," Yin Wu Ke said with a smile. His demeanor and tone made it seem like he was flirting with someone. However, his hands did not stop moving. He conjured a mysterious spell seal and activated the power of the Yin and Yang umbrella. The yin and yang umbrella flew above his head and started to spin rapidly. The edges of the umbrella were as sharp as knives. Boundless white light surged out of the umbrella, forming countless white light blades that shot towards Ji Tianqing. Yin-yang feather blades. Hundreds of light blades shot out like a rain of arrows. They did not stop and immediately engulfed Ji Tianqing's figure. The entire stage was lit up by the white light. The air was also sliced by the light blades. Streaks of white marks appeared in the air. Ji Tianqing could tell that the yin and yang umbrella in Wu Kei's hands was a supreme-grade immortal soul magic treasure. It was extremely powerful. Without hesitation, he took out his Kenshin battle robe and turned it into a pair of golden wings to protect himself. Wings of the Golden Rock. Instantly, all the white light blades hit the golden wings, causing a series of loud thuds. Boom, 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 boom. White light filled the sky. Golden light flashed and shards of golden and white light splashed everywhere. Destructive shockwaves spread out in all directions, fiercely crashing into the defensive formation of the arena. The huge white light shield started to shake violently. It kept on twisting and shaking, as if it could not take the pressure anymore. The hundreds of thousands of people in the square looked at the intense battle on the stage. They were all excited as they cheered and discussed enthusiastically. Most of them were shouting Wu Kei's name, hoping that he would teach Ji Tianqing a lesson. However, 10 breaths passed very quickly. Wu Kei used 100% of his power and released thousands of yin-yang feather blades. However, he was still unable to hurt Ji Tianqing. The sharp yin-yang feather blades were all blocked by the golden wings. Ji Tianqing was not hurt at all. Wu Kei's face was pale as he finished casting his spell. His chest heaved up and down as he panted. The yin and yang umbrella also stopped spinning and returned to his hands. He held on to the yin and yang umbrella and stared at Ji Tianqing in frustration. He said unhappily, "Humph. Do you only know how to defend like a turtle shell? How boring." Boring? Ji Tianqing opened his golden wings and looked at him indifferently. Suddenly, he raised the barrel of heaven. "Then take my sword." As he said that, he used 100% of his power. His eyes were extremely focused as he stabbed out with his sword. Show! A cold light appeared and quickly disappeared into the sky. Wu Kei was stunned. He did not understand the purpose of this sword technique. In the next moment, when he suddenly realized what was going on and guessed the secret behind this sword technique, it was already too late. Boom! That cold light exploded in front of his chest. It turned into a blinding mushroom cloud and rose into the sky. The blinding white light covered the entire stage. It also covered Wu Kei and Ji Tianqing's figures. The hundreds of thousands of people in the square could not see what was going on in the stage. Instantly, they all revealed anxious and worried expressions. No one knew what would happen to Wu Kei after he was struck by this strange sword technique. Chapter 1480. After a long while, the white light that engulfed the arena finally dissipated. Wu Kei's figure appeared, and everyone could see his situation clearly. His snow-white robe had become a pile of rags, and there was a huge hole in his chest. There was even blood stains on it. His face was getting paler and paler, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. His breathing was also getting messy. "You brat, you are really cruel. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have held back." Wu Kei stared at Ji Tianqing angrily. As he spoke, he opened up the yin-yang umbrella and covered half of his body. Then, with a flash of white light, he changed out of his tattered robe and put on a luxurious white robe. He looked at Ji Tianqing coldly and activated the power of the yin-yang umbrella. He said in a low voice, "Brat, I won't hold back anymore." Obviously, Wu Kei was infuriated after losing twice and being injured by Ji Tianqing in front of everyone. However, Ji Tianqing's expression was still indifferent and his eyes were calm. He did not react to his words at all. Before Wu Kei could attack, he waved the barrel of heaven and slashed out with all his might. Swing! With a swing of the barrel of heaven, 1,000 feet long crescent-shaped sword light slashed towards Wu Kei with a destructive force. Wu Kei formed a spell with his hands and controlled the yin-yang umbrella to become 1,000 feet wide, blocking the sky in front of him. Prung! The crescent-shaped sword light slashed onto the yin-yang umbrella, and a loud sound was heard. The sword light shattered on the spot, but the yin-yang umbrella was unharmed. It spun quickly and flashed with a blinding white light. Without waiting for Ji Tianqing to attack again, Wu Kei had already formed a hand seal and used his trump card. Yin-yang sky suppressing. As he shouted coldly, the yin-yang umbrella lit up with a half-black and half-white light and started to spin quickly. The black and white light formed a 1,000-feet wide ball of light. It spun quickly like a wheel, just like the yin-yang fish. Under Yin Wu Kei's control, the black and white disc released a terrifying suppressive power that enveloped Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing frowned when he sensed the formless suppressive energy that was like a mountain pressing down on him. He also activated his vast and mighty dermic powers, and his body violently expanded to a height of 10 feet, turning him into a majestic giant. Then he held the enlarged sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed at the yin-yang wheel with all his might. He wanted to break through the invisible power that was suppressing heaven and earth. Heaven-cleaving sword. The 1,000-meter-long golden sword seemed to be able to split the heavens and the earth. It broke through the invisible suppressive force and slashed at the yin-yang wheel. With a loud boom, the gigantic sword collapsed on the spot, turning into fragments that scattered all over the sky. However, the yin-yang wheel was not damaged at all. It continued to spin, releasing the invisible power of yin and yang to suppress Ji Tianqing. Since the first move failed, Ji Tianqing immediately used a second move. Big Dipper Sword. He held the sword of burial of heaven in his hand and instantly stabbed out 7 dazzling sword lights that pierced towards 7 different positions on the yin-yang wheel. This sword technique was even more powerful, and the mysteries it contained were even more profound. Bang, bang, bang. However, the 7 sword lights all pierced the yin-yang wheel, causing a series of loud sounds to ring out before exploding. The yin-yang wheel shook violently dozens of times, and it flashed with black and white light, but it did not stop spinning. Yin Wu Kei's face became even paler, and his breathing became even more chaotic. However, he gritted his teeth and continued to release even more dermic powers to increase the power of the yin-yang wheel. Ji Tianqing frowned, and his expression became even more serious. He thought to himself, this Yin Wu Kei is indeed stronger than Kuang Long. He is indeed worthy of being called a genius of the Xinwu continent. Although Lu Yin was confident that he could defeat Yin Wu Kei, he had to admit that Yin Wu Kei was indeed very strong. The formless yin and yang forces suppressed him, making it difficult for him to move. His waist became bent, and his bones emitted crisp cracking sounds. If not for the fact that he had cultivated the galaxy body refinement art and had tempered his body to the extreme, he would not have been able to withstand the yin-yang wheel's suppression. Yin Wu Kei tried his best to resist the suppression of the yin and yang forces. He held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and raised it above his head. His essence, qi, and soul merged as he unleashed his most powerful attack. Sky-splitting sword. A 3-kilometer-long blazing white sword appeared, and it carried with it a destructive might as it slashed towards the yin-yang wheel. At that moment, the white light illuminated half the sky, completely covering the scorching sun high up in the sky. The hundreds of thousands of people in the plaza were unable to open their eyes because of the blinding white light. Boom, crack! Following an earth-shattering explosion, the 3-kilometer-long blazing white sword instantly shattered. Endless fragments of white light burst forth in the sky, like white snow filling the sky. The giant yin-yang wheel was also shattered on the spot, exploding into dozens of fragments. The yin-yang umbrella returned to its original form, flashing with white light. It was thrown out of the sky and landed at the edge of the arena. Yin Wu Kei also spat out a mouthful of blood as he flew out, smashing heavily into the white light barrier before falling to the ground powerlessly. The violent shockwaves, the earth-shattering explosion, and the fragments of light in the sky lasted for a long time before dissipating. This battle had finally ended, and the victor had been decided. Ji Tianqing stood in the middle of the arena without any change in expression. He was unscathed, and his body was as straight as a sword. He exuded a powerful, domineering, and mysterious aura. Yin Wu Kei staggered to his feet, blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. His white robe was also dyed red, and he looked a little haggard. It was obvious who had won and who had lost. Seeing this, Great Emperor Chu Yun raised his eyebrows. His pupils constricted, and a strange look flashed across his eyes. The sage master and the other powerful experts all revealed looks of disbelief as they discussed secretly with each other through voice transmissions. The hundreds of thousands of people in the plaza were already dumbfounded. They could not believe it, and they all exclaimed in disgust. "Oh my God! Am I seeing things? That kid defeated Yin Wu Kei? How is that possible? This is too unbelievable." Even In Wu Kei couldn't have lost so thoroughly against Lan Yiqing, right? If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I wouldn't dare to believe it. That kid fought 2 consecutive battles and defeated Kuang Long and In Wu Kei. Although In Wu Kei hasn't admitted defeat yet, he is already heavily injured. I'm afraid he is no match for Ji Tianqing. 15 minutes ago, when Ji Tianqing stepped onto the arena for the first time and appeared in front of everyone, many people rejoiced in his misfortune and looked at him with disdain. But now, Ji Tianqing had defeated Kuang Long and In Wu Kei in a domineering manner. He was extremely mysterious and powerful. Those who had mocked him before all felt awkward and embarrassed. Especially those who had said that Ji Tianqing was not worthy to challenge In Wu Quebec. They were so embarrassed that they wanted to find a hole to hide in. Chapter 1481. On the arena, Ji Tianqing and In Wu Kei stopped fighting. The two of them stood a few thousand feet apart. One of them was as stable as a rock, while the other's aura was weak and his face was pale. Ji Tianqing looked at In Wu Kei calmly and said, "You have already lost." In Wu Kei held the yin-yang umbrella in his right hand while his left hand covered his bloodied chest. He stared at Ling Xian angrily. "Of course I know. Do I need you to remind me?" Ji Tianqing's expression did not change as he said, "If you are not satisfied, you can use your primordial spirit dharma." His words were still short, and he spoke very slowly. His accent was also a little awkward. However, In Wu Kei ignored all this. He stared at Ling Xian with a dark expression and said angrily, "You are really annoying. I will admit defeat. With such a cold and stiff attitude, you will not be able to make friends in the future." Ji Tianqing was stunned. He looked at In Wu Kei strangely. After a moment of silence, he said calmly, "I have never thought of making friends with you." "You." In Wu Kei almost choked. He was so angry that he rolled his eyes. "You really don't know what's good for you. If not for the fact that I can't beat you, I would have beaten you to a pulp." Ji Tianqing looked at him expressionlessly. He was too lazy to reply. Perhaps he did not know how to reply. In Wu Kei did not admit defeat. He continued, "Ji Tianqing, although you are very strong, I have to warn you. Don't even think about challenging Lan Yiqing. She is the undisputed #1 genius of the younger generation in the Chu-Yun Empire. You have won 2 battles in a row. Your name has already spread far and wide. You should know when to stop. I am talented, good-looking, kind, and magnanimous, so I will not argue with you. However, if you offend Lan Yiqing, you are dead meat." In Wu Kei said all this seriously. He did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. He looked as if it was a matter of course. Ji Tianqing couldn't stand his incessant chatter and couldn't help but frown. "You should go back and recuperate." Wu Kei's lips curled up into a playful smile. "Hee. I thought you were a block of wood. So you actually know how to care about me. Thank you for your concern, but this injury is nothing to this young master." Ji Tianqing was completely speechless. He didn't bother with him anymore and turned to look at the Sage Sovereign on the rainbow auspicious cloud. He said loudly, "Lord Sage Sovereign, I want to continue the challenge." Wu Kei's face froze as he shouted angrily, "Ji Tianqing. Brat, are you treating my words as nothing but the wind? If you fail the challenge, you will be executed." Ji Tianqing ignored him and looked at the Sage Sovereign with a determined gaze. The Sage Master frowned and pondered for a moment. He turned to look at Great Emperor Chu Yun and secretly asked for his opinion through voice transmission. Below the square, the hundreds of thousands of commoners were once again shocked by Ji Tianqing, once again letting out loud cries of surprise. Is this brat crazy? He has already won 2 matches in a row, and he still dares to challenge Lan Yiqing? This brat is too arrogant. He actually dares to challenge Lan Yiqing. He must be tired of living. In the entire Chu-Yun Empire, who doesn't know Lan Yiqing's strength? That brat is dead for sure. Ji Tianqing has already won 2 matches in a row. He has already lost his mind. If he can get first place, his name will be known throughout the world today. When he enters the Clear Sky Pagoda in the future, he will also receive the best treatment. He is too rash. He has already lost his mind for fame. He has already won 2 matches in a row. How much strength does he have left? He is seeking his own death. When he fails the challenge, the Sage Sovereign will execute him on the spot. Just as countless people were discussing spiritedly, the Sage Master announced the results in a loud voice. In this match, Ji Tianqing has won and is now ranked 2nd. In Wu Kei has fallen to 3rd place. Next match, Ji Tianqing will challenge Lan Yiqing. Since the sage sovereign had already spoken, Yin Wu-Kei could only suppress his anger and leave the stage with a gloomy face. Just as he flew to the edge of the stage, Lan Yiqing had already flown over from the plaza. She was like a ray of icy blue sword light, heading straight for the stage. When Lan Yiqing brushed past Yin Wu-Kei's shoulder, she said 2 words coldly. Trash! Yin Wu-Kei's body instantly froze. His face became extremely ugly, and a trace of cold anger flashed in his eyes. However, he suppressed his anger and pretended not to hear those 2 words. He silently returned to the bottom of the stage. Swish! A blue light flashed, and Lan Yiqing landed on the stage. She stood a few hundred feet away from Ji Tianqing. Her face was as cold as ice, and her eyes were as cold as ice as she stared at Ji Tianqing. She said in a cold voice, "You are very arrogant, but you should not have challenged me." Ji Tianqing looked at her indifferently. His tone was indifferent as he said slowly, "Just now, the 2 of them said the same thing." Lan Yiqing immediately frowned, and her eyes flashed coldly. "You are courting death." As she spoke, a light flashed in her hand, and an icy blue, crystal-clear treasure sword appeared. The treasure sword seemed to be formed from blue ice. It was exquisite and beautiful, and it exuded a formless, cold aura. It could actually cause one's primordial soul to tremble and feel pain. Ji Tianqing frowned slightly as he sized up the treasure sword seriously. At the same time, a voice transmission sounded in his head. "This is Lan Yiqing's famous sword. It is called the Extreme Ice Sword. It is made from the 9 heavens Xianbing. It has already surpassed the primordial soul level. Be careful of her sword manipulation technique and the Xianbing sword realm." Ji Tianqing turned his head to look at the bottom of the stage. He met Yin Wu-Kei's serious gaze. Although he wanted to ask Yin Wu-Kei why he was helping him, he had already done so. Lan Yiqing had already started to cast a spell. She controlled the extreme ice sword to attack. She did not move from her original spot as she conjured a sword spell with both hands. She used her primordial soul to control the sword and stabbed it towards Ji Tianqing. Swish! The extreme ice sword pierced through the sky, and 99 streaks of icy blue sword radiance shot out, enveloping Ji Tianqing's body. The entire stage flashed with cold light, and the temperature dropped to the extreme. Even steel could be frozen and cracked. Ji Tianqing was enveloped by the extreme ice qi. He felt his entire body turn cold, and even his primordial soul was about to be frozen. What a powerful sword qi. Is this the primordial spirit sword control technique? As this thought flashed across his mind, he waved the barrier of heaven with all his might, and 49 streaks of dark golden sword radiance shot out. The golden sword radiance formed a huge sword net, which enveloped the incoming icy blue sword radiance. Boom, boom, boom. The 2 sword radiances clashed violently, and there was a deafening sound. The sword radiance flashed, and golden and icy blue fragments flew everywhere. The entire stage started to shake. Ji Tianqing's 49 streaks of sword radiance were all destroyed. Out of the 99 streaks of icy blue sword radiance, more than 80 were destroyed. The remaining dozen streaks of sword radiance all hit him. He was blasted away on the spot, tumbling 1,000 feet away. Although his physical defense was strong, and he did not bleed, his white robes were white. However, his white robe was torn to shreds, and his chest and back were pierced with white marks by the sword light. The extremely cold air invaded his body, and his entire body was about to be frozen stiff. Chapter 1482. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The extreme ice sword unleashed 360 rays of icy blue sword light, forming a sword net that enveloped Ji Tianqing's figure once again. At that moment, the entire arena shone with blue light. Half of the sky seemed to have been sealed by the frost qi. Ji Tianqing cleared the frost qi in his body as quickly as possible and hurriedly used the stealth step. Whoosh! His figure immediately disappeared and teleported several thousand feet away, flying behind Lan Yiqing. Then, an inconceivable scene appeared. The 360 rays of icy blue sword light also appeared several thousand feet away and continued to attack Ji Tianqing. It was obvious that the sky full of sword light had locked onto Ji Tianqing's primordial spirit. He couldn't escape no matter what. Wings of the Golden Rock. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing could only wrap his wings around his body and resist the onslaught of sword light. Bam bam bam. A series of muffled sounds erupted, shaking the sky. The sword light was all blocked by the golden wings and exploded into icy blue fragments. Ji Tianqing was also sent flying, crashing heavily into the white light barrier. His spiritual power was a little chaotic. Before he could launch a counterattack, Lan Yiqing controlled the extreme ice sword and slashed out 3 rays of icy blue light. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The dazzling icy blue brilliance condensed into 3 huge icy blue dragons that descended from the sky for the kill. The huge dragons stretched out their claws and fangs. They were extremely ferocious, as if they wanted to tear Ji Tianqing to pieces. Ji Tianqing wielded the Burial of Heaven sword and used all his strength to resist. Another series of pung 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 muffled sounds burst out, and the 2 different colored sword lights collapsed into fragments all over the sky. Ji Tianqing was sent flying again, crashing into the corner of the arena. Lan Yiqing stood in the middle of the arena. She controlled the extreme ice sword with a cold expression and attacked Ji Tianqing continuously. From the very beginning, she had the upper hand and the initiative. She attacked Ji Tianqing fiercely, displaying her incomparably powerful strength and exquisite swordsmanship. Ji Tianqing was in an extremely passive situation. He could only rely on the divine concealment step and his exquisite swordsmanship to deal with her. It wasn't that the 9 swords of the Burial of Heaven was inferior to Lan Yiqing's swordsmanship. In fact, the 9 swords of the Burial of Heaven were of a higher grade, more profound, and more powerful. However, Lan Yiqing's cultivation level was higher, and his foundation was too strong. He was even stronger than Ji Tianqing. In addition, her magical treasure, the Extreme Ice Sword, was a heavenly tribulation-grade magical treasure. Its power far exceeded that of a primordial soul-grade magical treasure. Because of this, she was able to completely suppress Ji Tianqing. The 2 of them fought fiercely in the arena, both displaying incomparably exquisite swordsmanship and exquisite spellcasting techniques. The hundreds of thousands of people in the square were dazzled by the sight. They were incomparably excited and constantly cheered and shouted, "Lan Yiqing, don't be soft-hearted. Trample on him. Ha! Arrogant brat. Do you know how powerful he is now? How can the top youth genius of our Chuyan Empire be someone he can challenge? I already knew that this brat was no match for Lan Yiqing. He's just asking to be humiliated. I dare to bet that this brat will fall in less than 100 breaths' time. 100 breaths' time? Aren't you underestimating Lan Yiqing too much? At most 30 breaths' time, this brat will definitely be defeated." Almost everyone was certain that Ji Tianqing was going to lose. Soon, he would be defeated miserably. Even Wuk Yin, who was kind to him, didn't have high hopes for him. His face was solemn, and his eyes were filled with worry. On the rainbow clouds, the Chuyan Emperor, the Holy Master, and the others were watching the battle between Ji Tianqing and Lan Yiqing. They were discussing this through telepathy. The Holy Master secretly asked the Chuyan Emperor, "Your Majesty, although this brat isn't Lan Yiqing's match, he is still a rare genius. When he is defeated, are you really going to execute him in front of everyone?" The Chuyan Emperor glanced at the Holy Master expressionlessly. He replied with telepathy, "Do you want me to go back on my words?" The Holy Master quickly shook his head and explained, "Of course not. The Holy Master's reputation is not to be tarnished. However, I feel that it is a pity to execute Ji Tianqing like this. Although he is not as good as Lan Yiqing, he is still a rare genius. Although he is a foreigner, he is a citizen of our empire since he is participating in the ranking battle. We are picking up a young genius for free. Our empire is sending 2 top geniuses to the Clear Sky Pagoda. They will definitely impress the Divine Master. If he and Lan Yiqing perform well and win the Divine Master's recognition, the Divine Master might reward our empire and reduce our offerings." The Chuyan Emperor frowned. After thinking for a while, he nodded slightly and didn't say anything else. At the same time, Ji Tianqing and Lan Yiqing had already exchanged more than 100 moves in the arena. After more than 100 moves, Ji Tianqing was already familiar with Lan Yiqing's primordial spirit sword controlling technique and understood its profoundness. He gradually stabilized his footing and blocked the attacks in an orderly manner. He even found a chance to counterattack. After the situation stabilized, Lan Yiqing couldn't do anything to Ji Tianqing for the time being. Her expression became gloomier. Cold light flickered in her eyes, and her entire body was filled with a monstrous chill. Originally, she wanted to use her fastest speed to defeat Ji Tianqing in 10 moves and intimidate the world. However, after more than 100 moves, she couldn't suppress Ji Tianqing anymore. This made her angry, as if she had been greatly insulted. Finally, she controlled the extreme ice sword to repel Ji Tianqing again. Then she made a prompt decision to use her ultimate skill. Xian Bing Sword Field. She formed a seal with both hands, and formed a mysterious seal. The extreme ice sword released a sky-piercing blue light that spread in all directions. Swish! Swish! Endless icy blue sword light enveloped the entire arena, forming an icy blue domain with a radius of 10 miles. The domain was filled with thousands of ice swords and cold qi that could freeze one's primordial spirit. This was her trump card, Xian Bing Sword Domain. Ji Tianqing was suppressed by the power of the Xian Bing Sword realm. His movement speed was reduced by half. His arcane energy and Yuan Shun were also frozen, unable to circulate freely, and his battle prowess was greatly weakened. Lan Yiqing stood in the air, looking down at him with a cold expression. Ji Tianqing, it's time to end this. You don't have the qualifications to fight with me. As soon as she finished speaking, she waved her hands and cast a spell, manipulating thousands of sword lights of extreme ice to attack Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing glanced at her, and a cold smile appeared on his face. I'll show you what a true sword domain is. As he spoke, his body lit up with a golden light that soared into the sky, and a giant golden sword that was thousands of feet tall appeared behind him. Swish! That was his primordial spirit golden sword. It shone with a sacred golden light, and thousands of purple lightning bolts circled around its surface, exuding a scorching and violent aura. Divine Thunder Sword Domain. He shouted and manipulated the primordial spirit golden sword to split into thousands of sword lights that spread in all directions. Swish! Swish! In the blink of an eye, a domain with a radius of 10 miles was formed. Golden light shone brightly, and lightning flashed. The domain was filled with a violent and overbearing aura. Chapter 1483. Everyone was dumbfounded when they saw the divine lightning sword domain that enveloped the arena. They revealed looks of disbelief. The resplendent golden light and tens of thousands of sword beams condensed into a mystical sword domain. This was actually nothing much. What truly left everyone dumbfounded was the explosive purple lightning. Everyone present knew very well that only ninth tribulation eminences could trigger the 9 heavens lightning tribulation. If one could survive every lightning strike, they would be considered to have transcended the tribulation. Their strength would also increase. Only ninth tribulation eminences had the right to control lightning. In the Outcloud Empire, there were many experts who could control lightning. However, these people had all reached the ninth tribulation realm. For example, Emperor Outcloud, the Sage Master, and the 8 nobles present. However, Ji Tianqing was only at the Essence Soul realm, yet he could control lightning. This was simply a miracle. It completely subverted everyone's understanding of the martial Dao realm. Not only were the hundreds of thousands of commoners stunned, but Emperor Outcloud, the Sage Master, and the 8 nobles' expressions changed drastically as they revealed looks of shock. On the 7-colored auspicious cloud, several powerful figures were discussing with each other in shock. How is this possible? He can actually control lightning with just the strength of an essence soul? How did he do it? I've cultivated the martial Dao for 400 years. This is the first time I've encountered such a strange thing. This kid is a freak. With some nurturing, his future achievements will be limitless. The Sage Master's expression changed several times as he secretly discussed this matter with Emperor Outcloud via voice transmission. Sage Emperor, I'm afraid we've picked up a treasure. Emperor Outcloud nodded slightly as his eyes flickered. He said solemnly, it's simply a miracle that he can control the power of lightning with just the strength of an essence soul. I really don't know where this kid came from. What kind of expert and faction can nurture such a monstrous genius? The Sage Master hurriedly said, this matter is easy. After the ranking battle ends, I'll summon this kid to the palace and interrogate him about his origins. Yes, we have to get to the bottom of this. Emperor Outcloud said with a burning gaze, I've been recruiting talents for hundreds of years, and it's finally paying off. After today's matter spreads out, the vast Heaven Pagoda's envoys will know very quickly. At that time, Lord Divine Master will definitely have a whole new level of respect for this emperor. The Sage Sovereign also revealed a gratified smile. What an unexpected gain. Sage Emperor, you will soon receive the Divine Master's favor. Just as everyone was discussing animatedly, the situation on the arena had already changed. Ji Tianqing released the Divine Thunder Sword domain, which completely offset the power of the Xian Bing Sword domain. He repeatedly waved his palms, controlling tens of thousands of golden swords. With the Zidian that filled the sky, he fought fiercely with Lan Yiqing. Pung pung pung. Boom. The golden and icy blue sword light collided with each other, producing a loud, muffled sound. Streaks of lightning snakes exploded within the domain, producing deafening booms. The extreme ice sword light was shattered inch by inch. Lan Yiqing was also at a disadvantage, constantly retreating. The Xian Bing sword domain that she was most proud of was actually unable to withstand a single blow from the might of the divine lightning. Her face was very gloomy, and her eyes were surging with shock and anger. Damn brat, he actually controlled the power of divine lightning. He really hit it well. He didn't appear earlier or later, but actually challenged me in the ranking battle to take away my honor. Damn it! The God-disciple ranking battle was very important to her. If she could enter the vast heaven pagoda as the #1 genius of the Chuyun Empire, her future would be limitless. Only in this way would her decades of bitter cultivation not be in vain. But now, all of this was going to be destroyed in the hands of Ji Tianqing. How could she not be angry? Fortunately, the extreme ice sword's power was strong enough to support the Xian Bing domain, and it would not collapse in a short period of time. She repeatedly waved her palms and used all her strength to cast spells to block Ji Tianqing's attacks. Finally, she found an opportunity and used her ultimate skill without hesitation. Ice Blade Storm. Following her cold shout, more than 9,000 ice sword lights condensed into a hurricane that was thousands of feet tall, engulfing Ji Tianqing. Swish! 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 The Xian Bing hurricane spun rapidly, frantically trying to strangle Ji Tianqing. The power of the extreme ice cold was pushed to the limit by Lan Yiqing, crazily eroding Ji Tianqing's body. Ji Tianqing was in the middle of the Xian Bing hurricane, and the blood in his body was almost frozen. But he tried his best to resist, directing 99 lightning pillars to attack the Xian Bing hurricane. Boom, boom, boom. In a series of loud noises, the Zidian lightning burst out, filling the entire domain. The arena was covered in purple light, and nothing could be seen clearly. The Xian Bing hurricane collapsed on the spot, exploding into thousands of pieces and splashing in all directions. Lan Yiqing was swept up by the violent lightning, and she spat out blood on the spot, crashing into the light wall of the divine lightning sword domain. But she gritted her teeth and endured the pain, not making a sound. She immediately channeled her energy to suppress her injuries, and once again manipulated the power of the Xian Bing sword domain to form thousands of ice blue sword lights. As long as the power of the Xian Bing sword domain was not exhausted, she could keep the Xian Bing sword domain running and continue to fight Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing also saw this point. He frowned, and a thought flashed through his mind. Lan Yiqing's strength is slightly weaker than mine, but she can be so strong because of the power of the Xian Bing sword. I have to find a way to break her sword domain, so I can defeat her as soon as possible. Otherwise, with the power of the Xian Bing sword, she will exhaust my Dharma power sooner or later. After making up his mind, he immediately opened the Divine Lightning Dharma eye on his forehead. Divine Lightning. The Divine Lightning Dharma eye stored an endless amount of divine lightning, and it poured out like a flood. A 1,000-foot-long pillar of divine lightning instantly shattered all the ice swords in the sky and fiercely hit the Xian Bing sword domain. Boom! Crack! At that moment, the sound of thunder resounded through heaven and earth and shook the area within a 1,000-mile radius. Half the sky was covered by purple light, and it was dazzling. Under the shocked gazes of countless people, a large hole was blasted open in the Xian Bing sword domain, and dense cracks appeared. The destructive thunder turned into billions of electric snakes and spread along the Xian Bing sword domain. With a cracking sound, the Xian Bing sword domain quickly collapsed, and soon it was broken into pieces. With the sword domain destroyed, Lan Yiqing's primordial spirit suffered a backlash. Her face turned pale, and blood flowed out of her mouth and nose. Her consciousness was hazy, and she was sent flying by the shock wave and fell to the edge of the arena. She endured the injury of her primordial spirit and struggled for a while before she got up from the ground. She hurriedly channeled her Dharma power to heal the injury of her primordial spirit and wanted to recover and continue to fight Ji Tianqing. However, Ji Tianqing had already removed the divine lightning sword domain and appeared in front of her out of thin air. Swoosh! The pitch-black and cold sword of burial of heaven was placed on her neck, and the tip of the sword was pointed at her throat. She looked up and met Ji Tianqing's cold and indifferent eyes. Chapter 1484. Lan Yiqing was the undisputed #1 genius among the younger generation of the Chu Yun Empire. From 20 years ago, she had stood out and won the title of the #1 genius 8 years ago. She had always carried a shining halo of glory. She was cold and arrogant. She did not even spare a glance for the younger martial artists of her generation. Even Wuk Yin and Kuang Long, who were second only to her, were nothing in her eyes. How could such a cold and arrogant girl admit defeat so easily? However, Ji Tianqing stood in front of her and scathed and pointed his sword at her throat. This scene was seen clearly by the Chu Yun Emperor, the Sage Master, and the hundreds of thousands of people in the imperial city. What could she do if she did not admit defeat? Intense humiliation and anger filled her heart, causing her slender body to tremble. She stared coldly at Ji Tianqing. Her pupils were burning with an icy blue flame. Her gaze was as sharp as a sword, as if she wanted to pierce Ji Tianqing into a sieve. Ji Tianqing could feel the unparalleled hatred in her extremely cold gaze. After a long while, Lan Yiqing said in a hoarse voice, "Ji Tianqing, I will remember you. I have worked hard for 20 years for today, but you have ruined it. Remember, one day, I will defeat you fair and square in front of everyone and kill you with my own hands." Lan Yiqing was not a talkative person. She had never spoken so much to anyone before. However, 20 years ago, she had been preparing for this year's God-disciple selection. She swore to enter the Clear Sky Pagoda as the #1 genius of the Chu Yun Empire. In the past 20 years, in order to increase her strength and surpass her peers, she had worked hard day and night. She had endured unimaginable pain. She had been on the verge of success. However, in the final ranking battle, Ji Tianqing had appeared out of nowhere and snatched the #1 position from her, destroying all her efforts. The difference between the #2 and the #1 was only 1 position. However, the significance was completely different. The world would only look up to the most outstanding genius. Who would care about the #2? After that, Lan Yiqing expressionlessly turned around and left. He turned into an icy blue light and flew away like lightning. She left the square and disappeared into the horizon. Clearly, she didn't even want to look at the rankings, much less listen to the discussions of the crowd. Regardless of whether everyone was gloating or feeling sorry for her, this was an insult to her. After Lan Yiqing left, the Sage Master announced the result in a dignified voice. Ji Tianqing wins this battle. Ji Tianqing has risen to first place, and Lan Yiqing will rise to second place. The majestic and mighty voice spread throughout the entire square. The hundreds of thousands of civilians all put on complicated expressions as they exclaimed and discussed loudly. Many people were shocked and in disbelief. They still couldn't believe that a nameless kid like Ji Tianqing could defeat Lan Yiqing. Some people were interested in Ji Tianqing's identity and were speculating about his origins and background. There were also people who were filled with righteous indignation. They were furious at Lan Yiqing's humiliating defeat. They beat their chests and stomped their feet, full of hatred and hostility towards Ji Tianqing. In the empty space below the stage, the dozen or so young geniuses all had complicated expressions. Everybody was sizing up Ji Tianqing with a serious look. They were secretly discussing his strength, methods, and background. They were quite vigilant against him. Xenophobia was a common trait of humans. It was the same in every world. Ji Tianqing, this unfamiliar outsider, became the opponent and enemy that everyone was on guard against. Only Yin Wuke was sizing up Ji Tianqing with his bright eyes and a playful smile on his face. "I didn't expect this guy to be so sick. He could even defeat Lan Yiqing. I didn't lose unjustly." Seeing Lan Yiqing so angry that he was about to vomit blood, it was too damn satisfying. Hee. I like this kid more and more. Wuke had been mocked and humiliated by Lan Yiqing many times. His heart was filled with hatred, and he couldn't wait for Lan Yiqing to be humiliated. Unfortunately, his strength and background were not as strong as Lan Yiqing's. He could only endure Lan Yiqing's humiliation. Today, Ji Tianqing had helped him fulfill his wish and helped him vent his anger. Of course, he was in a good mood and wanted to laugh out loud. Previously, when he was defeated by Ji Tianqing, he was depressed and embarrassed. But now, all his depression and unhappiness were swept away. The challenge was over and Ji Tianqing had won first place. Naturally, he had to leave the stage. Swoosh! He stepped into the air and walked down from the stage. He landed on the empty space below the stage. The dozen or so young geniuses around him all took a few steps back and maintained their distance from him. Only Wu Kei didn't care about the strange looks that others were giving him. He quickly went up to him. He walked in front of Ji Tianqing, reached out his hand with a smile, and patted Ji Tianqing's shoulder. "Not bad, kid. You really hid your strength well." Ji Tianqing looked at him expressionlessly. He frowned and didn't say anything. Anyone could tell that he didn't want to be too close to Wu Quebec. However, Wu Kei pretended not to see his expression. He acted as if he was very familiar with him and smiled. "Ji Tianqing, from today onwards, you are the #1 genius of the Chuyan Empire. In a few days, the Clear Sky Pagoda's emissary will arrive and bring us to the Clear Sky Pagoda. When that time comes, we will enter the Clear Sky Pagoda to cultivate, and we will be brothers." Ji Tianqing continued to ignore him. He looked at the stage expressionlessly and treated him like air. Wu Kei didn't feel awkward at all. He stood shoulder to shoulder with him and looked at the stage with a smile. He was still talking nonstop. "Lan Yiqing, that girl, has always been arrogant and cold. She doesn't care about anyone. It's a pity that we can't afford to offend her. Even if she humiliates us, we can't fight back. But you are strong enough. Not only did you ruin her reputation, you defeated her in front of everyone. You even made her accept her defeat wholeheartedly. How satisfying." Ji Tianqing couldn't help but frown. He turned to look at him and said coldly, "Don't speak without thinking. What do you mean I ruined her reputation?" Wu Kei was startled. He hurriedly explained, "Don't misunderstand. I'm not saying that you tainted her innocence. What I mean is, seeing that he was making things worse, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but shout, 'Shut up!' Wu Kei frowned and curled his lips to express his dissatisfaction. Previously, her eyes were very bright when she looked at you. She seemed to be interested in you. If you are brave enough, maybe you can try to taint her. Maybe she won't resist?" Ji Tianqing's face turned even darker. He looked at him seriously and said coldly, "Let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a noble young master named Morong. He was even more beautiful than a girl. He took the initiative to get close to me and tried his best to rope me in. But then, Wu Kei's interest was immediately piqued. He asked expectantly, 'Then what happened?' Ji Tianqing looked at him coldly and said slowly, 'Then I killed him. Not even his bones were left.'" Chapter 1485. If Ji Tianqing remained silent, Wu Kei could still pretend that he did not see his coldness and take the initiative to express his goodwill. However, Ji Tianqing's story made Wu Kei feel extremely awkward. After remaining silent for a while, he said to Ji Tianqing, although you have obtained first place, you are still an outsider and a rootless duckweed. This young master is magnanimous and will not argue with you. However, if you continue to be so cold and arrogant in the future, I am afraid that you will not be able to do anything and will meet with misfortune sooner or later. Furthermore, this young master is only reminding you out of goodwill. If you do not know what is good for you, this young master will not bother with you." Ji Tianqing naturally understood this logic. However, he was naturally disgusted and repulsed by such a seductive young master. Hence, he looked at Wu Kei calmly and said seriously, "Thank you for your reminder. However, please be more reserved." Wu Kei rolled his eyes gloomily and turned to leave. Kuang Long, who was not far away, watched this scene silently. He could not help but reveal a mocking smile. When Wu Kei walked past him, he laughed coldly and transmitted his voice, "Kikik. You are being snubbed, right? You are really shameless." Wu Kei turned his head and glanced at him. His face was filled with contempt as he replied, "You were defeated by him in less than 3 moves. How can you still have the face to speak? He is better looking than you, his aura is more outstanding than yours, and his strength is much higher than yours. If this young master does not want to get close to him, should I care about an ugly and disgusting brute like you?" Kuang Long's face turned green from the humiliation. He clenched his fists tightly and gritted his teeth as he stared at Wu Quebec. He wanted to tear him into pieces. "Wu Kei, Yin Yang." Just as he was about to scold him, Wu Kei revealed an extremely disdainful look. "Ugly person, don't talk to this young master. You are dirtying my eyes and ears." After saying this, he carried the exquisite Yin Yang umbrella and walked away leisurely. Kuang Long was so angry that he almost vomited blood. However, he could not refute him. He could only stare at his back view and curse him in his heart. Very quickly, 15 minutes passed. None of the geniuses stepped onto the stage to challenge again. The rankings had already been fixed. The sage master announced loudly, "The ranking battle of this year's Disciple of God selection has ended." The 15 young geniuses on the list would represent their countries and head to the vast heaven pagoda to cultivate in seclusion. I wish all of you good luck in martial arts. I also hope that all of you will work hard in your cultivation. Don't let down the prestige of your country, and fight for the glory of your country. 7 days later, the vast heaven pagoda's divine envoy will grace the imperial city with his presence and come to guide everyone to the vast heaven pagoda. During this period, everyone must stay in the imperial city and do not leave. If you delay the journey, you will bear the consequences. After the announcement, the rainbow auspicious cloud flew high into the sky, left the city square, and flew towards the imperial palace in the north. The hundreds of thousands of people in the square all heaved a sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Earth-shattering discussions and cheers erupted. Everyone's emotions were stirred up as they fervently discussed the previous ranking battles. Almost all the topics revolved around Ji Tianqing, Lan Yiqing, and the others. Everyone knew that from today onwards, Ji Tianqing's name would definitely spread throughout the Outcloud Empire, and he would become a super genius that everyone knew. The most important thing was that his identity and origin were mysterious. It was very topical. He came out of nowhere and swept away the 3 great young geniuses the moment he showed his face. He won 3 battles in a row and seized first place bravely. He was ridiculously domineering and was also rather legendary. Ji Tianqing did not pay attention to anyone. After the sage master and the rest left, he silently left the city square. He returned to the temporary lodging place in the southern city and entered an old house. The house was not large. It was only 50 feet square, but there was an ancient pine in the courtyard. There was an ancient well and a stone table under the tree. The environment was still considered peaceful. He entered the bedroom and sat cross-legged on the dark red pearwood bed. He closed his eyes and circulated his skill to meditate. After a moment, he clearly sensed that there were over a dozen indistinct divine senses that were currently quietly sweeping across the entire house. After those dozen over formless divine senses dissipated, several more unfamiliar divine senses probed over and secretly observed the situation in the house. Without a doubt, he had become famous in the arena today. He had attracted the attention of the entire imperial city. Experts from all walks of life were targeting him. Not only were there people using their divine senses to probe his location, but there were also many sneaky warriors lurking around the house, secretly monitoring him. He didn't even need to investigate to know that many factions had already begun investigating his identity and origins. However, all of this was within his expectations. He had long thought of a countermeasure, so he wasn't worried about it. Unknowingly, an entire afternoon passed. He meditated for a few hours, recovering a lot of his dermic powers and psyche. Just as the sky turned dark and the lanterns were lit, a group of people arrived at the entrance of the house. The leader was a middle-aged man with a dignified bearing. He wore silver standard armor, and a wide sword hung by his waist. His entire body emitted the aura of a ninth tribulation eminence. Behind him was a group of solemn and dignified guards. Their actions were uniform, making them appear disciplined. Ji Tianqing probed with his divine sense and identified these people. They were most likely palace guards. As expected, the group of people stepped into the house and stood still. The silver-armored man shouted in a dignified voice, "I'm here on the orders of the Holy Emperor to pass on an imperial edict. Ji Tianqing, quickly come and receive the edict." When Ji Tianqing heard this, he immediately raised his eyebrows. The corners of his mouth curled into a playful smile. "Hee, I was right. Great Emperor Chu Yun secretly sent people to monitor me. He has long found out where I'm staying. In the end, he couldn't hold back and wanted to figure out my identity and origins." He remained silent and didn't reply. He continued sitting on the bed with his eyes closed. He had no intention of receiving the edict. In the house, the silver-armored man waited for a while, but Ji Tianqing didn't appear. He immediately frowned in displeasure. He looked coldly at the bedroom door and shouted angrily in a low voice, "Ji Tianqing, if you don't appear to receive the edict, you will be looking down on the Holy Emperor's dignity. This is a crime punishable by death." Ji Tianqing still didn't appear. He only said calmly, Please tell the Holy Emperor that I won't be receiving guests for the time being, nor will I leave the imperial city. I will only wait 7 days for the Clear Sky Pagoda's divine envoy to arrive. I will naturally leave with the divine envoy." His voice reached the courtyard. When the silver-armored man heard this, he frowned and thought to himself, "Damn it! This kid really doesn't know what's good for him. He's actually so arrogant and rude. I'm here on orders to pass on an imperial edict. This is the Holy Emperor's order to summon him. He actually treats it as a visit? How preposterous." The silver-armored man had been the captain of the palace guards for more than 100 years. He had been ordered to pass on hundreds of edicts. Those who were summoned by the Holy Emperor, no matter how noble or powerful they were, would all respectfully receive the edict. Chapter 1486. Given the silver-armored man's personality, he really wanted to order Ji Tianqing to be arrested. He wanted to send Ji Tianqing to the palace for trial and charge him with the crime of deceiving the emperor and looking down on the sage emperor. However, he remained silent for a moment and suppressed his anger. He knew that Ji Tianqing had a mysterious background and a special identity. He had just won first place in the ranking battle today, causing a sensation in the entire imperial city. From the reactions of the sage emperor and the sage master, it seemed that they valued this person. He was only a guard captain and didn't dare to make decisions on his own. He couldn't bear the responsibility if he ruined the sage emperor's plan. Therefore, he weighed the pros and cons and left the residence with the guards. He returned to the palace to report the news. In the northern city district of Heavenly Cloud City, there was a magnificent palace complex that covered an area of 20 square kilometers. This was the Outcloud Empire's imperial palace. It was sacred and dignified, and no one could blaspheme it. Under the dark night sky, the imperial palace was brightly lit both inside and outside. Countless elite guards stood guard inside and outside the imperial palace, guarding the various checkpoints and key roads. The entire imperial palace was protected by a powerful array formation. There were also countless open and hidden sentries, as well as patrolling guards. In the depths of the imperial palace, there were many experts holding down the fort. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that it was impossible for a 1,000,000-strong army or a large number of Ninth Tribulation experts to sneak into the imperial palace. Only super experts at the martial sage realm could sneak into the imperial palace. In the depths of the imperial palace, a dark golden light was lit in a quaint and elegant study. This was Emperor Outcloud's imperial study. It was decorated very luxuriously, but it didn't lose its elegance. The study was spacious and clean. A gorgeous palace lamp hung on the roof in the middle. It was inlaid with hundreds of gems. Rows of bookcases, vases, screens, and other items were placed on the walls. Exquisite paintings and maps hung on the walls. Emperor Outcloud, who was dressed in a golden robe, was sitting on a wide golden throne. On the purple jade desk in front of him were a few stacks of memorials, documents, and more than a dozen white jade slips. 2 dragon-shaped bronze incense burners were emitting green smoke. There was also a crystal-clear white jade pot that contained a pot of supreme-grade calming tea. It emitted a faint fragrance. Great Emperor Chu Yun sat on his throne with his eyes closed. Occasionally, he would take a sip of tea from his jade cup. The white-robed sacred expert silently stood to the side, quietly waiting while holding the golden book and large brush. A moment later, a man's voice came from outside the study. Reporting to the Saint Emperor, "I, Yu Kai, am here to report." Emperor Chu Yun opened his eyes and looked at the door of the study with anticipation. The sage master said with a dignified tone, "Bring Yu Kai for an audience." As soon as he finished speaking, the door to the study opened. A middle-aged man in silver armor entered the study with a respectful expression. This person was the captain of the royal guards, Yu Kai, who had announced the decree to Ji Tianqing. He walked to the middle of the study and stood still. Just as he was about to report the news, Great Emperor Chu Yun frowned. There was confusion and displeasure in his eyes. The sage sovereign also asked in a dignified tone, "Where's Ji Tianqing? Why didn't you bring him here?" Yu Kai was intimidated by the two's powerful auras. He immediately bowed in fear and explained, "Please forgive me, Saint Emperor. I went to Ji Tianqing's residence and announced the decree in person. However, that brat was very arrogant. Not only did he not show himself, but he also went against the Saint Emperor's decree." Then, Yu Kai repeated Ji Tianqing's words to Great Emperor Chu Yun and the Sage Master. After he finished speaking, Great Emperor Chu Yun and the Sage Master's expressions changed. They frowned fiercely, and their eyes were somewhat gloomy. "Yukai, you may leave first." The Sage Master waved his hand and dismissed Yukai. After Yukai left, only Great Emperor Chu Yun and the Sage Master were left in the study. Great Emperor Chu Yun frowned. He gently knocked on the purple jade table with one hand and said with a gloomy expression, "Is this brat too arrogant or too ignorant?" The Sage Master analyzed expressionlessly. Although Ji Tianqing isn't a citizen of this country, no matter where he comes from, he should understand the principle that the monarch's authority is as heavy as a mountain. In my opinion, it's not that this brat doesn't know etiquette, but that he's purposely refusing to see you. Humph. He's purposely provoking my dignity to test my attitude? Great Emperor Chu Yun raised his eyebrows and sneered. The Sage Master frowned and thought for a moment. He shook his head and said, "This brat is overflowing with talent and outstanding. He doesn't seem like such a reckless person. What's the difference between this and seeking death? I think he's most likely trying to convey a message to the Saint Emperor to let you know his position." Great Emperor Chu Yun's interest was piqued. He said, "Let's hear it." The Sage Master said in a low voice, "According to what this brat said to Yukai, he clearly wants you to know that he's not interested in any of the influential forces in this country. He doesn't want to come into contact with the forces in this country. He'll only wait 7 days for the Clear Sky Pagoda's divine envoy to arrive and leave this country." Great Emperor Chu Yun thought for a moment and nodded. "After your analysis, there's some truth to it. The various major forces in this country will definitely be unable to hold back and will secretly find an opportunity to contact him, rope him in, and bribe him. If there's a hidden force behind him, they will also try to contact him. Let the heavenly shadow guards continue to monitor him and don't let go of any clues. I want to see what his background is. Are his goals and intentions really what he said they were?" The Sage Master nodded slightly and said in a solemn tone, "In addition, I've also ordered all the Shadow Guard branches in the Empire to do their best to investigate him." Great Emperor Chu Yun nodded in satisfaction. That's good. If there's a problem with his identity and background, we'll be able to find out the results very quickly. If he's really innocent and magnanimous, then I'll fulfill his wish and let him smoothly head to the Clear Sky Pagoda 7 days later." After saying that, Great Emperor Chu Yun slowly got up and straightened his sleeves. He turned around and was about to walk out. "Sage Master, follow me." The Sage Master was stunned and asked doubtfully, "Sage Master, where are you going?" Great Emperor Chu Yun revealed a playful smile and answered while walking out, "Of course, I'm going to Ji Tianqing's residence." "Ah." The Sage Master revealed a stunned expression and said in disbelief, "Sage Master, that brat just rejected your summons. Not only did you not punish him, but you're also going to meet him personally? This matter will definitely spread. At that time, won't others laugh at you?" Great Emperor Chu Yun waved his hand and said meaningfully, "No, this is all superficial. However, I'm going to meet him personally. This is the way of an emperor." Ji Tianqing won first place today, and his name shook the imperial city. This news must have spread throughout the empire. When I sent Yukai to summon him, it must have been seen by the secret agents of the various major forces. Because of this, not only can I not punish Ji Tianqing, but I'm also going to meet him personally. Only then can I show my magnanimity and respect to the wise. Chapter 1487. Great Emperor Chu Yun's words enlightened the Sage Master. As it turned out, Great Emperor Chu Yun wasn't truly magnanimous, nor was he a wise ruler who treated his subjects with respect. He wanted to act like he was thirsty for talents to win the praise and respect of the empire's citizens. This was for the common people of the world to see, and also for divine Lord Taihao to see. The Sage Master understood and didn't say anything else. He accompanied Great Emperor Chu Yun out of the study and hurriedly summoned a group of palace guards. They carried a luxurious dragon carriage and escorted Great Emperor Chu Yun out of the palace. About an hour later, the dragon carriage arrived outside Ji Tianqing's residence. Great Emperor Chu Yun took advantage of the night to meet Ji Tianqing. He didn't set up any ceremonial guards and didn't cause any commotion. He seemed to be very low-key. However, everyone knew that the secret agents of the various factions would soon receive the news. This news would spread throughout the city tomorrow. At that time, the citizens would definitely secretly discuss this matter and praise the sacred emperor. Great Emperor Chuyun walked down from the dragon carriage and ordered the palace guards to guard the courtyard entrance. He only brought the Sage Master with him. He stepped into the courtyard and stood still. The Sage Master held the golden book and brush in his hands and said with a dignified expression, "Ji Tianqing, the sacred emperor has personally come. Why aren't you coming out to welcome him?" In the bedroom, Ji Tianqing was still sitting on the bed, but his eyes were already open. He frowned and thought to himself with a strange expression, "This great Emperor Chu Yun actually came to see me personally? If he isn't loyal, then he's a traitor." He could guess why great Emperor Chu Yun had personally come to see him. It was most likely a show of effort on the surface, taking the opportunity to show his tolerance and desire for talent. Since great Emperor Chu Yun had personally come, he had to meet him no matter what. Otherwise, he would be too arrogant. At that time, even if great Emperor Chu Yun wanted to execute him, no one would sympathize with him. Thus, he got up and walked out of the bedroom. He tidied his clothes and walked to the courtyard. Ji Tianqing greets the sacred emperor and sage master. He calmly cupped his hands and greeted the great emperor of the Chu Yun Empire and the sacred master. "You may rise." Great Emperor Chu Yun nodded slightly and led the sage master to the main seat in the living room. Ji Tianqing followed him into the living room and sat down on a chair on the left. Great Emperor Chu Yun looked at him with burning eyes and said sternly, "Ji Tianqing, you should know why I'm here, right?" "I don't quite understand. Please enlighten me, Saint Emperor." Ji Tianqing shook his head and calmly replied. Great Emperor Chu Yun's lips curled into a playful smile as he said in a dignified tone, "There's only me, the Saint Master, and you here. There's no need to play dumb. Let me be frank. Where did you come from? What is your background? Why did you enter the imperial city and interfere with the god disciples' ranking battle? What is your purpose?" With that, he waved his hand and shot out a dark golden light that enveloped the entire house. In this way, no one could find out what was going on in the house or hear their conversation. Ji Tianqing had expected that great Emperor Chu Yun would question him about this. He calmly explained, "You may not believe me, Saint Emperor, but I'm telling the truth. A year ago, I woke up in a desolate mountain range. I was seriously injured and had lost all my memories. I didn't know where I came from or where I was going. After I recovered, I walked out of the mountain range and came to the Chuyan Empire to familiarize myself with the environment. One day, I accidentally heard about the god disciples' selection and learned about the legend of the Clear Sky Pagoda. I don't know why, but an obsession emerged from the depths of my soul. I wanted to participate in the god disciples' selection and return to the Clear Sky Pagoda no matter what." Great Emperor Chu Yun and the sage master looked at him expressionlessly and listened to his story quietly. When they heard this, their expressions changed and they frowned at the same time. "What? Return to the Clear Sky Pagoda? Ji Tianqing, what do you mean? Do you have some relationship with the Clear Sky Pagoda?" Ji Tianqing appropriately revealed a blank expression. He calmly shook his head and said with a confused look, "I don't know what's going on either. I racked my brains for a long time, but unfortunately my memory is blank. I can't remember the past at all. I only know that the 3 words Clear Sky Pagoda made me feel close and warm from the bottom of my soul. It seemed to be related to me in the past." Great Emperor Chu Yun and the sage master frowned and narrowed their eyes. An imperceptible shock and a trace of suspicion flashed across their eyes. The two looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. The sage master secretly used his divine sense to check Ji Tianqing's divine sense to see if he was lying. Great Emperor Chu Yun stared at Ji Tianqing with burning eyes and said in a dignified tone, "Ji Tianqing, what you've said is simply too inconceivable and unbelievable. You should know very well what the Clear Sky Pagoda means. It's the sacred place of martial arts in the divine nation of Tai Hao, the place where divine Lord Tai Hao preaches. If what you said is true, I will let you leave safely and follow the divine envoy to the Clear Sky Pagoda. If you dare to fabricate lies, I will definitely sentence you to death and destroy your soul." Great Emperor Chu Yun shouted angrily and released a terrifying martial sage aura that suppressed Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing's body suddenly shook, and his face turned pale. His whole body trembled, and cold sweat dripped down his back. However, he endured the terrifying suppressive power and stared at Great Emperor Chu Yun with clear eyes. He said firmly, "Saint Emperor, I am not lying at all. If you don't believe me, you can send a message to the Clear Sky Pagoda and ask for the details." Great Emperor Chu Yun did not speak. He stared at him sharply and observed the subtle changes in his expression. After a long while, he withdrew his terrifying martial sage aura, and a playful smile appeared on his face. Haha, if that's the case, I will believe you this time and allow you to leave the nation and go to the Clear Sky Pagoda. I also hope that you can recover your memory soon and figure out your identity and origin. When that time comes, don't forget the kindness I have shown the Chu-Yun Empire. Ji Tianqing lowered his head and panted silently. He did not reply. Great Emperor Chu-Yun glanced at the Sage Master and saw him nodding slightly. He then got up and walked to the door. Rest here for the next few days. Remember to go to the city square 7 days later and welcome the arrival of the Clear Sky Pagoda's emissary. When he finished speaking, he had already led the Sage Master out of the house and boarded the luxurious dragon carriage. Soon, the palace guards carried the dragon carriage and left the house quickly, disappearing into the night. Ji Tianqing slowly raised his head and looked coldly at the entrance of the house. He secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, I was prepared and made up the story in advance. That was how I was able to fool Great Emperor Chu-Yun. Chapter 1488. Before participating in the ranking battle, Ji Tianqing spent 3 days preparing. He found out that the great emperor of the Chu-Yun Empire was a hypocrite who was eager for quick success. He also knew that the Clear Sky Pagoda status was sacred and unattainable. Even the great emperor of the Chu-Yun Empire would not go to the Clear Sky Pagoda to investigate the truth. That was why he dared to fabricate an amnesia story. He used this story to hint to the great emperor of the Chu-Yun Empire that he was somehow related to the Clear Sky Pagoda. If the great emperor of the Chu-Yun Empire wanted to kill him, he would have to consider the consequences. Moreover, if he went to the Clear Sky Pagoda as the #1 genius of the Chu-Yun Empire, there would only be benefits for the great emperor of the Chu-Yun Empire. The great emperor of the Chu-Yun Empire was astute. How could he not understand the stakes? The facts also proved that Ji Tianqing had made the right bet. The situation was just as he expected. After the great emperor of the Chu-Yun Empire tested him, he did not summon him again. Of course, the spies and experts hiding in the surroundings of the house had never left. They had been secretly monitoring him all this time. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. Heavenly Cloud City was still bustling with noise and excitement. The citizens of the city were still discussing the ranking battle. They were immersed in shock and amazement. The streets and alleys were filled with people in groups of 3 to 5. They were all discussing and guessing Ji Tianqing's background. Ji Tianqing's name became known to women and children. He became the center of all the topics. Moreover, there was a rumor that swept through the entire imperial city like a gust of wind. The streets, alleys, houses, taverns, and other places in the city, as long as there were martial artists and citizens gathered, the same conversation was playing out. It said that on the night of the ranking battle, the Holy Emperor sent a guard captain to summon Ji Tianqing to the palace for an audience. However, Ji Tianqing had shut the door on the guard captain and refused to show himself. Not only that, he even arrogantly refused to meet the Saint Emperor. Countless people were shocked when they heard this. Their eyeballs almost fell to the ground. No one dared to believe that the #1 genius, Ji Tianqing, was so arrogant that he even dared to defy the Holy Emperor's decree. Isn't this too arrogant? He's simply brainless. Is he not afraid of being hacked to death by the Imperial Guards for provoking the Saint Emperor like this? Even if he's the #1 genius and is about to become the vast Heaven Pagoda's god disciple, he also doesn't have the qualifications to put on airs before a holy emperor. Unbelievable. Is this news true? You didn't make it up, did you? Ji Tianqing must have been sentenced to death by 1,000 cuts, right? However, this was only the first half of the news. The second half of the news was even more shocking and shocked everyone present. Everyone might not believe it, but not only was Ji Tianqing not executed, he is still alive and well. That night, the Holy Emperor actually brought the Holy Emperor to Ji Tianqing's residence. The Sage Emperor had personally left the palace to meet him. Although no one knows what the Sage Emperor said to him, according to the palace guards, the Sage Emperor seemed to be in a good mood. When everyone heard this news, the entire place was silent. Everyone was dumbfounded and completely dumbfounded. When everyone came back to their senses, they opened their eyes wide and cried out in surprise as if they had seen a ghost. Oh my God! This can't be true, right? You. Are you sure you're not joking? Making up stories about the sage emperor is punishable by death. This is unbelievable. Ji Tianqing offended the sage emperor's dignity. Not only did the sage emperor not blame him, he even went to meet him personally. Damn Ji Tianqing, he's too arrogant and rude. Luckily, the sage emperor is wise and virtuous and magnanimous, so he forgave Ji Tianqing's crime. Otherwise, he would have been executed long ago. Yes, the sage emperor is broad-minded and thirsty for talents. That's why he treated Ji Tianqing so courteously. We are extremely lucky to be able to receive the sage emperor's protection. With the sage emperor in charge of the empire, why should we worry about not being able to prosper? There will be a day when our empire will become the #1 empire. Countless cultivators and commoners came back to their senses and sang praises of the great emperor of the Chu Yun Empire. They worshipped and supported him. As for Ji Tianqing, everyone felt that he was even more mysterious and extraordinary. They were filled with deep respect for him. A young genius who was worthy of the great emperor of the Chu Yun Empire's treatment had not appeared in the past 300 years. How could they not fear and envy him? 2 days later, this news spread out of the imperial city and quickly spread to all the major cities. Most people had the same reaction when they heard this news. Unknowingly, the great emperor of the Chu Yun Empire's reputation became even higher. He also received more support and praise from the commoners. Ji Tianqing also became more legendary. He became the most mysterious martial arts genius in the past 300 years. In the east of the Chu Yun Empire, there was a glacial region that stretched for millions of miles. Under the pale blue glaciers were endless majestic mountain ranges. There were many strange peaks and ravines. The terrain and environment here were very special. It was called the Eternal Night Glacier. There was no sunlight here for many years. The sky was always covered by thick haze and clouds. The glacial region, with a radius of millions of miles, was dark and gloomy. Cold winds howled as if it was eternally sleeping in the night. That was how the Eternal Night Glacier got its name. This was a dangerous, forbidden area. It was also the private territory of the Lan family. Without permission, no one was allowed to step into the Eternal Night Glacier. Otherwise, they would die. In the depths of the Eternal Night Glacier, there was a castle with a radius of 5 kilometers on top of a huge ice peak that was tens of thousands of feet tall. The castle was completely built with ice. It looked crystal clear and flickered with a pale blue light. It looked dreamy, like a small kingdom in a world of ice and snow. At this moment, in a secret room in the depths of the castle, a tall figure in a black robe was sitting on a pale blue and blazing white throne. The room was dark and gloomy, and the temperature was extremely low. The figure was covered by a black robe. It covered the figure's body, limbs, and face. It was impossible to tell whether it was a man or a woman. It was also impossible to tell his age and appearance. This person had no aura at all. It was as if he had become one with the ice. There was no sound or temperature. It was very strange. Suddenly, the door of the secret room opened. A middle-aged man in a blue robe walked into the secret room quickly. He knelt on one knee in front of the black-robed figure and bowed respectfully. "My lord, there is new news from the imperial city." From within the black robe, a cold, deathly still, emotionless voice rang out. "Speak." It was impossible to tell if the voice was male or female. It was like 2 pieces of ice rubbing against each other. It was sharp and ear-piercing. The blue-robed man lowered his head respectfully and reported in a serious tone. On the night of the ranking battle, the Saint Emperor summoned Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing refused to meet the Saint Emperor and refused to meet him. Chapter 1489. After the blue-robed man reported the news, the secret chamber fell into silence. The black-robed figure was silent for a long time before he said a few words coldly. "He's arrogant. There's something wrong with this." The blue-robed man stood respectfully with his hands by his side and reported in a low voice, "You're right. Judging from that guy's behavior, he has a mysterious background and is very arrogant. With Emperor's temperament and bearing, he would never tolerate such arrogant behavior. But for some reason, Emperor tolerated him and did not intend to pursue the matter. I've sent people to investigate, but they couldn't find out what Emperor had talked about with him. I'm just guessing that the guy really has amazing talent, which is why Emperor thinks so highly of him and treats him so honorably." The black-robed figure was silent for a while before he asked, "Have you found out about that guy's background?" The blue-robed man quickly replied, I've investigated more than 10 top forces and hundreds of noble families in our country, but I couldn't find any information about him. So far, we've confirmed that he's probably not a citizen of our country. Even if he's from our country, he must be from a poor family with no foundation or background to speak of." When he said this, the blue-robed man's tone was firm and filled with coldness. The black-robed figure was silent for a while before he asked again, "How's Ching-er's situation?" The blue-robed man looked worried and said in a low voice, "Since Miss lost to Ji Tianqing in public, she returned to the villa outside the imperial city and shut herself in. Miss is really angry, and she hates him very much. The few maidservants who served her were all injured or killed by her. Even the young master who went to comfort her was injured and thrown out by her. Now no one dares to go near her." The black-robed figure did not say anything. He was not surprised by this result. The blue-robed man frowned and said in a resentful tone, "Miss has worked hard for decades and endured so much pain and suffering just to make a name for herself in this year's disciple of God's selection. That damned bastard appeared out of nowhere in the ranking battle and took away Miss's title as the #1 genius. He humiliated Miss in public and made her decades of hard work go down the drain. More importantly, they even humiliated our Lan family and made the other families secretly laugh at us and gloat over our misfortune. Jun Shang, this enmity must be avenged. Not only will it help Miss vent her anger, but it will also show the dignity of our Lan family." After pausing for a while, the blue-robed man continued, "Emperor's attitude towards that guy is very indulgent. He seems to have high hopes and completely gave up on Mississippi. When that guy enters the Clear Sky Pagoda in the future, he will definitely overshadow Miss's glory and treatment." After the elders in the clan discussed, they all proposed to quietly assassinate that brat before he headed to the vast Heaven Pagoda. Anyway, he has no background in this country. He is like a rootless duckweed. Killing him is pointless. The black-robed figure remained motionless. His tone was cold and emotionless as he said, "Kill, of course we have to kill. Those who block my Lan family's path will die without a doubt. However, this matter cannot be handled by the disciples of the Lan family." The blue-robed man hurriedly nodded and said, "Monarch, this subordinate understands what you mean. Our Lan family's disciples have a special cultivation method, and it's easy to leave behind traces and clues. Emperor thinks very highly of that guy. If we leave any evidence behind, it will inevitably cause a storm. I have thought it through. I will contact the Hidden Killer Pavilion later and let them send assassins to kill him. I guarantee that we can get rid of him successfully. Even if this matter is exposed, Emperor will at most find out that it was done by the Hidden Killer Pavilion. He will definitely not implicate our Lan family." "Very good." The black-robed man agreed. "Do it quickly." "Yes." The blue-robed man bowed and hurriedly left the secret chamber. In an old house in Heavenly Cloud City, Ji Tianqing was still in his bedroom, sitting on the bed with his eyes closed. On the surface, he looked like he was just resting, but in reality, his primordial spirit was slowly circulating and accumulating vast dermic powers. He was repeatedly sorting out his martial arts foundation in preparation to break through to the 5th level of the primordial spirit realm. Before the battle with the demons, he had reached the 4th level of the primordial spirit realm. In order to deal with the ancestor fiend celestial, he had even used the ancient god's sword array to gather the strength of countless experts, temporarily reaching the peak of the primordial spirit realm. Now he had reached the limits of the 4th level of the primordial spirit realm. He was just a step away from breaking through to the 5th level. He was not in a hurry to succeed. He raised his strength methodically and wanted to break through naturally. During the process of cultivation, he also used his divine sense to secretly investigate the situation around the house. Within a 5-kilometer radius, there were dozens of streets and tens of thousands of houses. More than 300,000 people lived there. However, he could still clearly detect that there were dozens of spies in the area who were constantly monitoring him. Most of the spies were from the imperial family. Only a few came from other factions. A few days ago, there were more than 1,000 spies secretly monitoring him. It was very messy. Ever since Emperor Tian came personally to find him, the news spread in the city. 90% of the spies of the various factions were withdrawn overnight. After all, Emperor Tian's personal visit was an indication of his attitude. Most factions did not dare offend Emperor Tian. They naturally wanted to avoid arousing suspicion and did not dare to involve themselves in the matter. The spies who dared to continue monitoring him were definitely from the top factions. Ji Tianqing only needed to analyze a little to understand these principles. Although my current situation seems dangerous, it is actually the safest. The various tyrants are watching me. Emperor Tian's men are also monitoring me. No one dares to act rashly. There are still 3 days left before the divine envoy of the Clear Heaven Pagoda arrives. When the time comes, I will leave Heavenly Cloud City with the divine envoy. Everything will be resolved, and I will no longer have anything to do with the Outcloud Empire. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, he sighed silently in his heart. Yao Yao, where are you? When I enter the Clear Heaven Pagoda, will I receive news of you and see your traces? Unknowingly, it was already midnight. Under the pitch-black curtain of night, the old house was silent. The house's main door and the various rooms were not lit. They slept in the pitch-black darkness. The spies who were secretly monitoring Ji Tianqing relaxed their vigilance when they saw that he had not left his room for several days. No one had entered the house either. Right at this moment, 3 indistinct phantoms appeared in the night sky thousands of meters away. The 3 shadows drilled into the ground and moved stealthily in the depths of the earth. They quietly crept towards the house without causing any sound or aura. A short while later, the 3 shadowy figures snuck into the old house from underground. They spied on the situation in the courtyard. When they saw Ji Tianqing meditating in the room, they simultaneously took out a pitch-black compass and used some kind of secret technique. Swish, swish, swish. Chapter 1490. No one knew what treasures the 3 pitch-black compasses were. However, the cage of black light had sealed off the entire house, making it impossible for anyone to see what was going on inside. Swoosh, swoosh. 2 indistinct shadows emerged from the ground and appeared in Ji Tianqing's bedroom. The 2 of them unleashed their fastest speed and used their most powerful killing moves to attack Ji Tianqing. Swoosh, swoosh. A pitch-black sword radiance and a dark golden saber radiance pierced towards Ji Tianqing's forehead and heart respectively. All of this happened in a split second. It was so fast that no one knew what to do and how to block it. The sword radiance and the saber radiance were about to pierce Ji Tianqing. At this critical moment, he suddenly opened his eyes, revealing a cold and sharp gaze. His entire body lit up with a dazzling golden light, which condensed into a dark golden mana shield. Bam! Bam! The saber radiance and the sword radiance pierced him at the same time, creating 2 loud, dull sounds. The dark golden dermic power shield was shattered on the spot, and Ji Tianqing was also sent flying by the terrifying impact. The violent force exploded and hit the surrounding walls. Cracking sounds could be heard as half of the house collapsed from the tremors, sending rubble and tiles flying all over the place. Ji Tianqing fell into the house. His eyes flashed like lightning, and only then did he see his surroundings clearly. He saw that there was a pitch-black void in all directions. It was at least a dozen miles in radius. In this mysterious void, only this house existed. He instantly realized that this pitch-black void must be the domain space of the 2 assassins. Not only did they want to assassinate him, but they also wanted to do it without anyone noticing. Damn it! The Holy Emperor and the spies of various forces are secretly monitoring this house. Someone actually dares to assassinate me? Ji Tianqing's face was very gloomy. His eyes flashed with cold, murderous intent. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, a dazzling cold light suddenly appeared in the pitch-black void behind him. Swish! It was a blazing white sword light that was 10 meters long. It was incomparably sharp and contained an invincible and terrifying might. When the sword light appeared, it was only a few dozen feet away from Ji Tianqing. At such a close distance, he had no time to dodge or block, and was directly pierced by the sword light. Boom! With a muffled explosion, he was sent flying by the sword light and smashed into the half-collapsed house. Dust and gravel flew everywhere, obscuring the sky. The entire house trembled violently. Cracks appeared on the ground, and the house collapsed completely, turning into ruins of bricks and stones. At the same time, a third blurry figure appeared in the dark void. This was a tall and skinny man wearing black leather armor. He wore a black iron mask on his face, revealing only a pair of eyes that were as sharp as swords. Both of his hands were covered in black gloves, and each of them held a black thin sword that was about 4 feet long. After his attack succeeded, he did not take advantage of the situation to attack. His figure turned into nothingness and hid in the void. At this moment, Ji Tianqing flew out from the rubble. Swoosh! He flew above the rubble and stood in midair. His expression was cold as he scanned his surroundings with a sharp gaze. He looked somewhat wretched. There were 2 holes in his white robe, with rags hanging from them. His hair was also a little disheveled. However, he was not injured. There was only a fist-sized dent on his back that was faintly oozing blood. It was the result of the 3rd assassin's attack. He had been stabbed in the back. Thankfully, his body had been tempered to an extreme, and his defense was extremely strong, allowing him to block the strike. Otherwise, the strike would have pierced through his body. He frowned as he looked coldly at the 2 figures 1,000 feet away. There are a total of 3 black-robed assassins. 2 of them are at the 7th Firmament Essence Soul Realm. The strongest assassin is hiding in the darkness. He is also the most dangerous. He seems to be at the 8th Firmament Essence Soul Realm. Damn it! Who sent the 3 of them? In a short moment of contact, he could tell the strength of the 3 assassins. With his strength, he would definitely not be able to withstand the attacks of the 3 assassins. He might very well lose his life here tonight. At this thought, his expression turned gloomy and his mood turned heavy. Suddenly, the 2 black-robed assassins attacked. In a flash, they appeared in front of him and joined forces to assassinate him. Swoosh! The 2 of them brandished their sabers and swords at the same time, attacking Ji Tianqing from both sides. The assassin on the left brandished his saber and slashed out 9 dark golden saber beams. They sealed off Ji Tianqing's escape route, leaving him with nowhere to run. The assassin on the right unleashed 8 cold beams of light with all his strength, stabbing towards Ji Tianqing's vital points as if they could pierce through everything. The 2 assassins cooperated with each other very well. They were flawless and had no blind spots. Ji Tianqing was caught in a dilemma. He could not dodge and could only use all his strength to resist. Dharma body of heaven and earth. He bellowed with a thunderous voice. Golden light surged out from his body as he pushed his physical defense to the limit. Immediately, a vast and mighty power poured into his body, causing his skin, flesh, and blood to turn a dark gold color, shining brightly. A black light flashed in his palm. He took out the sword of burial of heaven and slashed out more than 10 sword beams. Bam! 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 The blazing white sword beams collided with the incoming saber beams and sword beams. A series of dull sounds rang out. Instantly, all of the sword lights were shattered, exploding into pieces that covered the sky and covered the earth, splashing out in all directions. Only the 9 dark golden saber beams were left. They hit Ji Tianqing hard and drowned his figure. Another dull sound rang out. He was sent flying by the saber beams and smashed into the void thousands of feet away. With his current strength, he was weaker than any of the assassins. There was no way he could withstand the combined attacks of the 2 assassins. However, this was not the most dangerous thing. The truly deadly assassins had been hiding in the dark all along. When he was sent flying, the 3rd black-robed assassin finally appeared. Sky gap flowing light. The skinny black-robed assassin appeared 200 feet away from Ji Tianqing. He waved a pair of thin black swords as fast as lightning and drew out a dazzling white light. That dazzling white sword light was like a bolt of lightning tearing apart the night sky, but also like a streak of light tearing apart the sky. Its power was unparalleled. It seemed to be able to cut through all obstacles and defenses. In just a third of an instant, the dazzling white light arrived in front of Ji Tianqing and was about to hit him. If he was hit by this sword beam, he would be seriously injured even if he did not die. At this critical moment, a golden light suddenly lit up behind him. A pair of dark golden wings appeared. Swoosh! A pair of wide golden wings immediately wrapped around his body, protecting him firmly. Bam! With a dull bang, the white light slashed the golden wings, splashing out a blazing white light that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. Chapter 1491. At the edge of the void, there was a pitch-black barrier of light. Ji Tianqing violently crashed into the wall, causing a loud bang sound. When he bounced back, the 3rd assassin's figure had disappeared into the darkness once again. The 2 assassins joined forces and attacked Ji Tianqing together. They were assassins and only wanted to kill their target as soon as possible. They didn't want to waste time and didn't want to engage in a pointless battle of words. Swish swish. In the blink of an eye, the 2 assassins arrived in front of Ji Tianqing. They waved their swords and sabers and attacked him from both sides. In their eyes, it was already a miracle that Ji Tianqing could survive until now. Even if he didn't die, he would be severely injured. Under such circumstances, Ji Tianqing definitely wouldn't be able to defend against their attacks. However, just as their attacks were about to land on Ji Tianqing quickly spread his golden wings and slashed out a dazzling sword light with the burial of heaven. Heaven-cleaving sword. He used all of his strength and slashed out a blazing white sword light that was hundreds of meters long. It exploded with an unstoppable force. Only a kacha sound could be heard as the huge sword shattered a few saber lights and fiercely chopped at a black-clothed assassin. The assassin was sent flying. Blood spurted out of his chest and splattered into the dark void. He flew for thousands of meters before landing in the dark void. His body twitched in pain and blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth. There was a wound that was about half a foot long on his chest. It was so deep that the bone could be seen. Blood was gushing out of the wound. The other assassin saw that his companion had been injured and his body trembled. He revealed an incredulous expression. Just as he was in a daze, Ji Tianqing used his ultimate technique, God Concealment Step. His figure disappeared into the darkness. His God Concealment Step was more profound and exquisite than the three assassins' concealment techniques. The three assassins' concealment techniques had to rely on the dark void to be completely hidden. However, there were still some flaws. Ji Tianqing had completely disappeared. Even the aura of his primordial spirit had become difficult to detect. The three assassins couldn't detect his tracks at all. They couldn't determine his location. Damn it! This person has also mastered a concealment technique? His concealment technique seems to be even more profound than ours. We can't detect his aura at all, and we can't find any trace of him either. How are we supposed to act? Quick, use the shadow compass and cast a spell to lock onto his aura. The three black-clothed assassins were scattered in the void. They maintained their stealth state vigilantly, secretly communicating with each other through divine sense. The third assassin was the strongest, and his stealth technique was the most exquisite. He hid in the void without moving an inch, waiting for Ji Tianqing to appear again so that he could unleash a thunderous attack. The other two assassins hurriedly cast spells to activate the shadow compass and search for Ji Tianqing's aura. At this moment, a dazzling cold light suddenly shone behind the injured assassin. Piercing sword. Following Ji Tianqing's cold shout, the cold light ruthlessly pierced the black-clothed assassin and exploded inside his body. Boom! A thunderous explosion sounded, and a dazzling white light soared into the sky like a mushroom cloud. The black-clothed assassin's body, as well as his black clothes and soft armor, exploded into pieces that flew in all directions. Crimson blood, mixed with countless pieces of flesh, scattered in the dark void. A ball of dazzling white light flew out from the debris in the sky and hurriedly fled to a dark corner. Damn it! Our intelligence was wrong. This person's strength is even greater than his performance in the arena. That dazzling white light was the origin spirit of the black-clothed assassin. He angrily sent out a divine sense message to warn his two companions. Be careful, I'll retreat first. As he spoke, he quickly escaped from the dark cage and burrowed into the depths of the ground. In just a few breaths, he escaped from the ground and left Ji Tianqing's residence. Ji Tianqing watched the origin spirit escape with his own eyes. He wanted to intercept and kill it, but he was stopped by the other assassin. Only Ji Tianqing and the two assassins were left in the dark cage. The black-clothed assassin at the seventh firmament essence soul realm held a treasured saber in the open. The skinny assassin at the eighth firmament essence soul realm held a pair of thin black swords in his hands. He was still hiding in the dark, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Ji Tianqing and the black-clothed assassin fought intensely in the void. Both of them used all their strength and used all sorts of ultimate moves. Saber flashes and sword shadows filled the sky, manifesting thousands of dermic radiances as they clashed intensely. Boom, boom, boom. Dull thuds sounded incessantly as violent shockwaves constantly spread, filling the entire dark cage. Ji Tianqing used all sorts of ultimate moves and used the effects of divine concealment steps to force the black-clothed assassin into a retreat. His injuries were constantly worsening. However, the skinny assassin hid in the dark. He would always attack Ji Tianqing at the critical moment in a futile attempt to kill him in one strike. Ji Tianqing could only block and defend, giving up on opportunities to kill the black-clothed assassin time and time again. Both sides fought for about 100 seconds. The black-clothed assassin was covered in injuries, but he did not make a sound. He clenched his teeth and endured. The skinny assassin hiding in the dark also exerted immense pressure on Ji Tianqing. He was covered in 6 new wounds that constantly spewed dark red blood. Finally, Ji Tianqing realized that this could not go on. If he wanted to defeat the 2 assassins and escape the dark cage, he had to take a risk. Star-shattering fist. He clenched his left hand into a fist and smashed it at the black-clothed assassin, blasting out a massive dark golden fist beam. The black-clothed assassin hurriedly slashed out a myriad of saber flashes to block the fist beam. Ji Tianqing took the opportunity to brandish the Burial of Heaven, stabbing out 4 sword flashes that enveloped the black-clothed assassin's figure. On the surface, it seemed that he had unleashed his strongest strength to severely injure the black-clothed assassin. The skinny assassin hiding in the dark immediately seized this opportunity and rushed to Ji Tianqing's back like a ghost, stabbing out 4 sharp black blades. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The 4 sharp blades were pitch black like ink and cold like ice. Moreover, they were thin, narrow, and extremely sharp. The 4 sharp blades were about to stab Ji Tianqing's head, neck, back, and other vital points. But at this moment, Ji Tianqing suddenly turned around and stared at him with a murderous look. Thunder! Ji Tianqing shouted in a low voice and instantly opened the third eye on his forehead. It released violent thunder and lightning, condensing into a pillar of thunder and lightning. Kaboom! In the earth-shattering explosion, the pillar of thunder and lightning struck the skinny assassin. It also reflected his eyes that were filled with fear. He was instantly sent flying by the thunder and crashed into a dark corner more than 10 miles away. The black leather armor he was wearing was also a powerful defensive artifact, but it was blasted into a pile of black debris by the thunder and lightning. The flesh and blood all over his body were charred and blurry. His body twitched violently, looking particularly miserable. Moreover, his body was in a state of paralysis, and his primordial spirit was also injured. He fell into a temporary state of dizziness, and his consciousness was somewhat fuzzy. You're tuning in to the Maze Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.